individually.
Right.
How do you decide like when to have individual sessions and when not to? Or are there any rigid rules like after these many sessions you have individual sessions, or when they walk in it's necessary to have individual sessions? How does it work?
Okay. I think that's a great question, Isha. Um, so couple therapy is a very complex process, right? Because members may be struggling with their own personal issues, which they may not be able to share with their partner because of the safety reasons. As a protocol in almost all couple therapists, I mean, me for sure, most of those people always structure the session in such a way that the first three sessions, we call it intake. During the intake, I see in the first sessions conjoined, both the couple members come to us and tell us about the presenting issues and all those kind of things. In the second session of the assessment phase, divide the sessions. Typically, every time this happens, sessions into two. I mean, that second session would be consisted of two individual sessions, which means I will tell the couple members that, in the first session itself, I would say, I want to see you alone, both of you individually, during the second session. So the first 25 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes, I spend time with them individually. So one party doesn't hear what the other party is saying. So, for example, during that time, I ask questions about suicidality, addiction, any trauma, any sexual abuse history, or violence, intimate partner violence. I can ask a bunch of things, and I keep that information with me, and I let the party go, and the other party come in, and then I ask the same questions. So they are free, and they are not. And that particular session, second session of the two individual components, that will be confidential for me, and I don't share that with anyone, with the couple members at all. And in the third session, I continue with a conjoined session, and then I collect data from all those first, second, and third. That I call it intake, and I sit with it and I try to figure out. I map what the real issues or what sort of interventions can I have, and then I go back. Then I tell them on the fourth session, I say, this is what I found. I won't talk about the intimate information that suppose she tells me I have an affair with somebody or I had an affair. And that is those kind of are individual. I don't share that information with them, but again, anything other than those first, second session, and I share with them. And I show them these are the things that I'm seeing, and I get them on board if they are willing to, or I would think that this is not a good case for me. I will refer the case to somewhere else outside. Or I would say I tell them maybe you're not ready for we cannot do conjoined therapy at this point. I can tell them to go for individual sessions first and then come back to us. Now, your second part of the question, Isha, is what kind of things, how do I decide whether there is an issue or not, whether I should see them individually or not? I do that often because every session gives us a lot of information, right? Every session in that sense, filled with clinical data, assessment, and all those things. So maybe during the sixth session, the couple members talked about something, that happened, maybe something to do with their trauma history. Then I sense that it may not be a good idea for both the couple to be present. Say, for example, she was abused by her uncle when she was a teenager, and then somehow she has a teenage daughter now. And now when her daughter goes to somewhere else or gets connected to the same uncle or some other she never uncle, then all those old trauma comes back to her. So she doesn't want that to talk about that. Again, those are her older issues. So I don't want her husband to be part of that process. So I will ask her to come for an um, I will ask her to come for an individual session just for that sixth session or seventh session. So basically, the point is, as we go through these sessions, we will find certain information. That information may not be safe for the party to disclose in the presence of the other person. So I do that individual screening or individual sessions. But again, my client is always the couple. Client is always the couple. You can have a client individual couple. So again, those are the kind of, I make that decision as I go along. That's how I go about it, because it's a very complex process, and people sometimes in the first three sessions they may not tell you the whole story. You may sense something is wrong, and then maybe once they trust you, once they begin to trust the process, then they may open up all those old stuff, and for that you may need individual session. Yeah. But my principle
And
is I never keep secrecy. See, there is no secret. I mean, unless those are problematic, things which I can. Yeah. Sorry, somebody was asking another question.
now I was saying, what if after the individual session, the other party demands to know what happened in the individual session?
No, there is a protocol, and I don't disclose any. If I promise something to the client during the second session, that I will. This is a kind of personal information. I do not disclose it at all. Um, but that may create some sort of suspicion or paranoia in the other person, and we can handle it. Again, we don't have to say everything. We are pretty. Couple therapists are trained to talk how you talk about those things without even mentioning. So I would tell them this kind of protocol. I just went through it, but I know what exactly is happening based on what she said or what he said. Yeah, yeah. It is a very, very sacred thing, and also very, very serious matter. Any other question?
Sir, this is Deepa here.
Yeah, Deepa. Yes.
Sir, of all the approaches that you discussed so far,
Mm.
which approach, very frequently you adopt, sir? Or is it a, you know, um, integrated approach that you tend to take up?
Yeah, Deepa, that's a great question. I'm going to talk about it today. Affective
Okay.
reconstructive section. How we because one approach does not serve us well because human realities are much more complex, and one approach cannot capture it. So because of that, we have to integrate it. But again, I use a different term called pluralistic approach, and I'll talk about all those. How do you do that stuff? I will be speaking very kind of more at length about it today. Say for example, we have a client. The client's presenting issue is, I have a problem with my husband. He's a lazy guy, and now he doesn't do much. He's laid off because of COVID. The company is shut down, and I'm really concerned and worried about it. So that's kind of presenting issue. She presents it as a behavioral stuff, right? As a behavioral husband's behavioral problem. But after the third session, first, second, and third, the intake, I understood it is not so much about his behavior. It is coming from somewhere else. And then we kind of targeted it. So although I thought of approaching the whole treatment from a behavioral perspective, integrated behavioral program, there are different approaches that we can use. I decided maybe I would go into family of origin first because there is something lurking there and something I have to deal with. So I changed the approach to family of origin. So the interesting part, Deepa, is we can really sequence. So I may start with behavioral, then I may go back to be, family of origin. From there, I may go to cognitive. Again, there's a way to sequence it. That's why we cannot just pull and push. Oh, let me do this. Let me do that tomorrow. Let me do something else. That's kind of haphazard and it's kind of crazy. It doesn't make sense. So there is a specific way to sequence it, and I will talk about that today. Depending on your client's need, we kind of sequence it. Should I draw from behavioral first, or cognitive second, or family of origin third, or psychodynamic four, or psychodynamic first? Those kind of sequencing we can always do. But you have to have that first three sessions to know what exactly that you are going to do. Does it make any sense?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
So I have another question,
Sure,
just
sure,
in
yeah.
a minute. Sir, in the past 4 days, I think we
Uh-huh.
just got a taste of these therapies, sir. Not completely. Like, do you
Right,
take trainings also for like to understand deeply exactly how we
yeah,
go about? Because I think we had just a taste of each
right,
of the skill.
right. True. That's also the kind of problem with the time factor too, right? Because the purpose of this thing was to kind of give a quick taste and also maybe some concepts that can be useful. And but in order to get deep into it, like for example, I was trained in there's something called internal family systems. I've been trained in that for the last 4 years. I've been working on that one particular model, internal family systems. That's kind of very cutting edge evidence-based approach that have been developed in the US. So I mean, so the point is, and emotionally focused. Again, it takes at least a year or two to be trained in that. Gottman the same. There are different. So each what we do in the schools, basically in the graduate program, postgraduate programs like this, or specialized training programs like this, kind of give us essence of those approaches, and then people can go into that in depth through specialized training. Those are within 10 hours we cannot do that, right? It's very hard to do in one model. Um, so those are the factors. You get a sense, you may gravitate towards a particular model, and then you may take special interest in learning more about it and get deeper into it. You may get supervision in that. Like when I've been supervised in IFS, internal family systems, for the first 2 years now, I'm providing supervision to people. It's kind of the 4 years into that, a lot of stuff. So you really have to go deep into those. Does it make any sense, Deepa?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah. It's like you're going to high school, right? High school teaches you everything, social studies, all those kind of stuff. And then you decide, hey, I want to go into sciences. And then from science, you focus on whatever you know. So those kind of specialization goes after getting the taste, get a sense of what it is.
Seb, can I just ask you a question?
Sure, Rashmi. Yeah.
Yes. So with supervision, it is we have to record our sessions,
Hmm.
right?
Is it a question or oh yeah, yeah,
Yes.
definitely. Yeah. Okay.
We have
Yes.
to, so we have to record our sessions, audio record it.
Audio or video, depending on the client. I know. Yeah. But
Yeah.
continue with the question. I'll respond to that. Okay.
So the issue here is in our Indian context,
Uh-huh.
many of our clients are not ready for that,
Mm. Mm.
are not
Right.
ready for recordings.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's a problem in a way. I mean, that's a problem in the sense that there are a couple of problems associated. The number one is, depending on how you present, if you tell the client that we would be recording it for your benefit and for our benefit. For your benefit in the sense that I say for example, when I see patients, I record. I have their permission to video
Okay.
record because I was as an academic institution, clinic associated with that. So our fee are low income families. We provide that,
Okay.
and we replay the sessions for them. So again, while they are in the room, like this is how your session went. This is where you got escalated. This is where. So he learns from that. So he can use that data to understand what it is. And also, you know, it is good for the therapist also because we may not capture everything pretty much, right? So if the client agrees that, in order because we will not be using this video or audio recording to put out on the YouTube or, to disclose information to other people and all, and then usually people are okay with that, especially in the US.
Hmm.
Maybe it all depends on how you sell the idea, how you
Oh,
tell them, how you convince them about that.
yeah. Right. Thank you.
But that's a very important thing, raw data, because in supervision, for example, in our program,
Hmm.
we want as close to the data, as close to the raw data as possible.
Hmm.
Otherwise, what the students would come and tell us, oh, this is what happened in our session. The student can report certain things, or students may not say the whole thing. So I'm talking about from a clinical supervisor's perspective. So no, I want the student to tell me what happened in the room. At the same time, I also want to watch the session with the student and
Hmm.
identify where what are the sequencing of those. So I think it's for educational reasons we use that. Raw data is
Yes.
a requirement for us.
Yes. I can understand.
Yeah. Thank you, Rashmi. And
Thank
yes, Rosha and Rosa, I think we are almost ready to go, right, for the session.
Yes,
Unless
Seb.
somebody, yeah, unless somebody was going to ask a question. Okay, so maybe we can take the question as we go along,
Yeah.
definitely. And I promise, I hope if the technology doesn't fail, promise to complete everything today. I'm going to talk about starting with the sexual dysfunctions and its role in couple relationships. Then I will go into functional analytic couple therapy, and then finally into affective reconstructive couple therapy, where we talk about sequencing, which model to use, how to use, those kind of things. So dysfunctional sexual dysfunctions in couples is a kind of huge challenge today. And I remember in 1990s when I was in the US here at that time, there was a huge market on Viagra. Viagra came out with, erectile dysfunction related things. And if you look at the market, a lot of people sell these kind of things about, as a remedy, not Viagra alone, but again, different. So our society, especially in the US, is so obsessed with sex. Sex in the sense, vaginal, penile penetration and its failures associated with that. But sex is much a bigger construct. We know that as therapists, it's much broader than what the main media, the mass media, really represent. And people do worry about it a lot. So sometimes, many often, what happens is, like, right after the first few months into marriage, people are getting upset about it. People are getting frustrated about the sexual dysfunction that are emerging, and they don't really look for help or from the professionals. They go to Google's and look for all this kind of crazy stuff or these remedies. It's kind of those create a lot of trouble. And also, so I want to talk about sexual dysfunction in couples. And I don't know about the Indian context much, but I'm going to share with you some of the instances that we have had here, and then I'm going to give you a comprehensive view of what the sexual dysfunction is all about and how we as therapists address some of them, at least. Jen, could you please? Okay. Couples who experience, we know this, mutually satisfying sexual experiences report higher levels of intimacy and overall marriage satisfaction or relationship satisfaction. That's kind of a lot of interesting research about that. And then again, the understanding of sex is much bigger than this. It's not a vaginal penile penetration or interaction. It's much bigger than that. Next one, please. Sexual dysfunction, it's a huge issue in couple relationships often. It's about unsatisfying experiences during sexual intercourse. That's what clients come to us and tell us about. And ICD, International Classification of Diseases, again, that of World Health Organization 2016 defined sexual dysfunction as change in sexual function that leads to unsatisfying, unrewarding, and inadequate sexual experience. So again, couple members are struggling with that. DSM in the US context, Diagnostic Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association. So they would say it's a significant disturbance in a person's ability to respond sexually to the partner and to experience sexual pleasure. So again, it's both ways, responding to the partner or providing to the partner and also receiving from the partner or experiencing sexual pleasure. Those kind of broad definition. Next one, please. Sexual dysfunctions are common among men and women, depending on many factors, like biological factors, psychosocial factors, cultural factors. There are a bunch. I can talk about it for a long time. Again, it's a common factor, not just for one group alone, but for both. A relationship can become strained when one or both partners are experiencing sexual dysfunction. So again, one partner, say for example, impotency, cannot have a sexual erection possible. That affects the relationship. Or she is, there is no desire in her. That also causes a lot of trouble in the system. So again, even in one partner, it causes a lot of trouble, as all of us know. So as therapists, next one, please. The cause of sexual dysfunction are many. There are many factors, a combination of factors. Some could be common genetic factors. congenital, means by birth, illnesses from birth, anatomical deformities, or predispositions to cardiovascular disorders or other things. Again, persons physiologically, the person has a lot of struggle with that. And of course, I'll talk about it in a few seconds. And the second factor could be a bunch of factors, like contextual or systemic, and also psychological factors, like increases in levels of daily stress. People live in stress these days. They run from place to place. There's no rest. They are, even when they're having sex, they're thinking about their work. Even when they're worried about their children's admission or whatever. Again, there are lots of stress. People are really, we live in a very, very different kind of world. And while having sex, there's a phone rings, in the middle of the night, and I have to respond to that because my team is waiting. There's an urgent. So again, those are interruptions. We're talking about, there was a time in sexual life, we call it sexual script. Basically, people had special place, bedrooms, or wherever they are, the special time. 9 o'clock they go, or whatever time they decide to go into that place, away from all sorts of distractions. And that's not the reality today. We are constantly bombarded, or depending on the clients also, the boundaries that they set around who can call at what time, those kind of things. So increases in levels of daily stress, that's one factor. Problematic attachments with the partner. Again, they may be sexually vibrant in all kinds of ways, but again, they don't have any good relationship with their partner. The partner's attitude, whatever happens between them, those attachments are not pretty good. So again, that also, I don't, that person doesn't feel connected to the partner to have that kind of special time. Or restrictive upbringing. Restrictive upbringing means there are certain, today people explore sexuality in all kinds of ways, all sorts of positions and all sorts of styles. And there are, even if we come from a land of Kama Sutra, right? Again, but again, at the same time, some upbringing, some maybe because of the cultural or religious upbringing, people are, very restricted. They don't really explore. They don't go into that world to really enjoy. So there are restrictive upbringing also can be a problem with certain partners because they won't accept certain positions, those kind of things. And then substance use disorders. That also, create a lot of trouble within the system, again, the way they use psychoactive substances. And that also debilitates people from performing. Trauma is a huge factor, traumatized life. A child who was sexually abused and aggressive by an aggressive person in his or her life, and if the husband, during the sexual intercourse, all those traumatic stuff can come up. I have dealt with several of them, from a psychosocial perspective, and it could be also a result of emotional abuse by the partner, or physical abuse by the partner, or even sexual abuse, rape. We talked about rape yesterday. Marital rape is pretty high, especially among certain populations. So again, as clinicians, we have to be mindful of all these possibilities. Again, there are, most of us in the US are trained in these areas, and there are specialized people, sex therapists and sexologists, and all those licensed sex therapists. All sorts of people are out there. So again, it is those people are constantly studying all these different phenomena, the different domains and their impact. Genetic impact. That I work with psychiatrists for those kind of physiological or medical or psychiatric related stuff, and then the psychosocial interventions also happen. So we need to have definitely to understand this dysfunction. Sexual dysfunction is not so simple. A Viagra wouldn't cut it, or one particular medication or an implant, and none of those kind of things really work. People have this kind of naive or very shallow idea about how they can overcome this reality. But again, it's much more complex. It has to be done by a professional usually. Next one, please. So there are consequences of sexual dysfunction, right? People have anxiety in couple relationship. The avoidance of sexual intimacy with a partner. Sometimes when the nighttime comes, or whenever they make love, they kind of have some sort of excuses. all sorts of excuses. They try to avoid because sexual intimacy with the partner, because of their own anxiety, maybe because of their own experiences, or whatever happened during the lovemaking and all those things. And depression also plays a lot of things. And relationship stress. They had a fight, huge fight, and they are not in a mindset, or one of the partners is not in a mindset, or she's upset about something, or he's upset about something that happened in the workplace, and she wants it. All those things are, again, there are many factors. Emotional disconnect. They are not connected to each other anymore. They don't feel that word. I remember a case we had, he was about 56 or something like that, and highly sexually, very active sexually. Um, and she was done with him. She was, early 50s, and she thought it was annoyance. She thought it was too much. Those kind of things. Again, emotional disconnect, because he was not a good person. He was not a good person in the sense they could not connect with each other in other domains. Or some of these things can lead to separation or divorce. But the point I'm trying to say is there are many challenges that come from there, and the dysfunction, consequence of dysfunction could be very, very vast and big. Next one, please. I can move to the next. Okay. Common sexual dysfunction in men is, of course, it's a whole topic in itself. We had special courses in all these things. Again, erectile dysfunction is one of them. What is it? As all of us know, man's inability to obtain an erection. Despite the presence of sex, there is a sexual arousal, there's a desire to engage in sexual intercourse, but cannot have an erection. So that penetration is impossible. Or premature ejaculation. It happens consistent ejaculation before he or her partner would like. Again, sexual act is done in a matter of just a few seconds. It started and ended for him, but she's just getting ready. The third one is delayed ejaculation. I think this is an important thing also. May have intact erectile capacity, but find ejaculation during sexual activity extremely difficult. There is no ejaculation. And it is almost impossible in some cases. And maybe and they reach orgasm after the fact that they go and masturbate. Those are very, so the partners may take it very, for example, am I not attractive enough for you, or am I not good enough for you? Those kind of, sometimes they don't even talk about it. Lots of internalization happens during that time. And again, this is kind of delayed ejaculation, premature ejaculation, and erectile dysfunction are common among men. There are other factors also. For women, please, next one, please. Jennifer, you can move to that. Thank you. Common sexual dysfunction among women is like hypoactive sexual desire disorder, which is kind of consistent lack of sexual desire that causes significant relational distress. She has no interest. There is no desire. If you look into Masters and Johnsons and Kaplan's, all those kind of older, those models that in the field of psychology we talk about, they talk about different stages, 4 phases of Masters and Johnson, and then 3 phases of Kaplan. I don't want to get into those details. Again, there is no desire at all to begin with. Or orgasmic disorders, which means consistent inability to reach orgasm. Again, orgasm, in spite of adequate sexual stimulation, takes a delayed orgasm. Or by the time he's done, those kind of things are, and she's not even there yet. Or other sexual dysfunction include experiencing displeasure. I had a couple of cases, and usually we do co-therapy or these kind of things. Again, experiencing displeasure during, or pain, pelvic pain related pain during sexual activity. That also, that causes a lot of anxiety for her to get into that. But he's ready to go, and he gets frustrated with that, and then he leaves. So those create, if it happens consistently, those are really, really problematic, unless if they address it. Again, most often what people mean by sex is vaginal penile penetration, but sex is much bigger than that, right? There's a play involved. There's a lot of stuff, and our community and society. Did I lose you? Hello?
You're audible, sir.
Yeah, but I cannot see the you okay, great, but somehow I cannot see the the screen. I don't know why. Can you see the screen? Okay. I somehow lost you guys.
Yeah, I'll just start sharing it again. Just a
Okay.
minute.
Okay. I will. Okay. Thank you.
Is it visible, sir, now?
No, it is not. Let me sign back in again. I think I got something terrible happened. Okay, join now. I'm back again, I guess. Can you see? Can you see me? Okay, great. Oh, there's an echo. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't
Oh,
know.
so I suppose you've signed in from two different devices, sir.
Okay, that's that's only only one. one. Okay, Okay, let me
Okay.
disconnect and come back. Okay, sorry about that.
Okay.
Or okay, so now can you hear me now? Is it?
Yes, sir. Very clear.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for women, again, orgasmic disorders is one, and other experiencing displeasure, as I said. Please, the next one. Okay. So if you look into the DSM-5, they talk about at least 10 different types. I don't want to get into any of these things, but again, you can learn more about it. Delayed ejaculation, I talked about. Erectile disorder, female orgasmic disorder, female sexual interest or arousal disorder, genitopelvic pain, again, the pain that we just talked about, male hypoactive sexual desire disorder, premature ejaculation, substance or medication-induced sexual dysfunction, and other specified sexual dysfunction and unspecific sexual dysfunction. You can move to the next one. So you can learn. There's so much we can talk about each of those. Oh, I forgot to tell you something. Okay, there's something very interesting. I work with a lot of veterans, military people, right? I work with, there's a lot of suicide among them. So I've been working on a couple of projects, research projects with that population. So one of the things that we have seen is battle exposed or combat exposed military veterans, meaning to say those who fight in Afghanistan. The US is involved in many wars, right? Afghanistan, Iraq, and all those places. When these people come back from war zones, they go through sexual dysfunctions big time. What do I mean by that? When they go to their partner, they were very sexually active, very sexually alive before he went into the war. After coming back from the war, he cannot have sex with her. There's no erection possible. When he's with her, any intimacy is really problematic. And then she's frustrated with that. And then he goes out and he goes to this prostitutes. There is no problem at all. He can have sex there. There is no issue at all. Multiple orgasms. There is no problem. So it's not about a physiological factor alone. There is something. So we see this kind of combat exposed war veterans, and we call it moral injury. We call it moral injury. That's a different term. That's a very complex term in itself. So those kind of things happen. The same way with some couple members, we see that. People have difficulty performing with each other, but outside that couple relationship, they are alive. They have affairs. Those are really, really activated. They can do multiple orgasms. I have dealt with a couple of cases like that as well. So it's not about the person cannot perform, but person cannot perform within the intimate partnership with a couple. Those are really problematic in many cases in the couple relationships, and then partner finds out about it, and then the whole struggle, not only about the betrayal but also about his capacity. That is he avoiding me or what happened? All those things are really problematic. I had a case when I was in Washington State. That is a very, very interesting case. I'll just say the reason I'm going to say this case quickly is because of to contextualize the complexity of the problem. So he was in UW, we call it University of Washington. I'm not mentioning any name here. By the time he came to me, he and his partner came to me. He was about 32 years old at that time, and his partner was about close to 31 or something. Anyway, so something happened. They were married for about 7 years without any trouble at all, and they had a couple of kids. Something shifted almost 7 years into marriage. and he could not perform anymore. And I knew, we did the psychosocial history, psychosexual history, and all those things and all. But I knew that something was missing in the picture. So I did the Isha's questions. How often do you do individual session early on? So I invited him for an individual session with me. And then I asked him to take me back to the history. And there was one specific significant event that happened. The fact was, he was from a place called Spokane. Spokane is kind of far away from Seattle, University of Washington in Seattle. So he moved to Seattle. At that time, one of his older cousins, a married couple without any children. So this guy, the client of mine, 32-year-old man, at that time was only about 21 years old. So he moved to Seattle, Washington, because he could not afford the dorm, which is kind of staying on campus. His older cousin invited him to stay with him. Older cousin and his wife, and they were in their 40s, early 40s at that time. So what happened was, this young man, 21-year-old young man, began to get closer to his cousin's wife, and he was staying with them, and they began to be more intimate, emotional connection, sharing thoughts, and all those things moved into more sexual intimacy. And then it happened many times. They had sexual intercourse many times while he was a student with his own cousin's wife. But his male cousin did not know anything of those things. One day, according to the story, when he came back, the cousin came back, both of them were in bed. He got into the car, drove away, and there's a place called anyway, and he shot himself there. He killed himself, the cousin. He knew what happened. He knew the car driven away. The wife knew about it, but nobody else knew about it. It was like a suicide. In the meantime, he had some depression going on, all this kind of stuff that he committed suicide. But this was a secret. Nobody knew. Even his wife did not know, and he didn't want to even tell his wife. So somehow something happened. That old trauma, that old, guilt, the betrayal, all those things came back to him. He dealt with it in therapy before, not to the level, the extent that he said that he was dealing with. But again, no, he never disclosed this information to anybody other than to me at that point, and that older cousin's wife. And they kind of disengaged. They went their separate ways and stuff like that. They didn't continue the relationship after that. So my question, what I'm trying to say to you is, again, we are so mysterious beings. At certain instances in life, these old stuff that was buried deep down, they come alive. Once it comes alive, then he could not function anymore. He cannot, that guilt, each time he was with his own wife, those guilt would come back to him. It would haunt him. And they tried different things, nothing worked. But again, that had to be, I thought it was more of a spiritual issue. The guilt and all those things are kind of not more than a psychiatric issue. It was more a psycho-spiritual issue. And then, I had to include somebody. So again, he began to do better. That information was never disclosed to his wife. And we thought it was not a good information because it was from the past. He was still faithful to his wife at this point. So again, I'm saying, when you enter the domain of sexual dysfunction, we're talking about a very complex, extremely nuanced kind of thing. And often the unconscious plays a huge role in it. And sometimes we don't even know. I had another case quickly again. I'm looking at the time. A young mother, she had, she began to lose her interest in sexual life. So she's about almost 50 at that time. And until that time, there was no problem. And then we kind of began to look into the whole thing. What happened was, her daughter was getting into the age of 16. And that's where we look at the factors that contribute to the whole thing. And then we figured it out that it was connected to when she was, this mother now, when she was 16, when she was in a college campus, she was raped there. And then she was kind of worried about her daughter's safety. She's going to get ready to go to college. So I'm saying, like, because my daughter is growing up in certain age and she may have the proximity or she may be exposed to such places, and then that connects me to my old rape that I had experienced when I was 16 on college campus. That has an impact on my relationship with my own husband, who I trust a lot. So the point is, it's extremely complex. You will never know unless you take them to those places. So that's why we need to have a psychosocial history. We need to know early relational experience of this person, not only in the family but also outside. All those are critical factors when you try to understand the construct of sexual dysfunction. It is much bigger. And again, if you look into the history of psychosocial, other kind of sexual, the studying about or understanding the the construct of sexual dysfunction, there's a significant shift that we see. I don't want to get into the history of all those things, but again, in the beginning of the 20th century, psychoanalysis was a huge factor. They used to treat this issue even today from a psychoanalytic tradition. They're like, it's sexual. According to them, sexual dysfunctions arise because of the unconscious conflicts from the past and also from the present. Behavioral approach, like in the 50s and 60s, Kaplan and Masterson Johnson and all those people, great pioneers, they said it's not just that not about the unconscious. It's all about the behavior, like learned behavior. When you were a kid, you did certain things and something happened to you. And then, again, there are a lot of, we can look into the history of people, especially trauma related to that, the behavioral things that they did behaviorally. They learned something problematic, and that kind of create those kind of things. So when they are in those kind of place, they are anxiety mediates, they cannot function. So they desensitizations, all a bunch of things that Masters and Johnson and Kaplan people, those people talk about. And now, towards the end of the last century, 20th century, and the beginning of 21st century, pharmaceutical companies are pushing it in big time, and there are a lot of medical and pharmacological treatments available. So we see, the history of the to understand this phenomenon of sexual dysfunction is over 120 plus years. Even before, if you look into the historical time, you see they used to think of the punishment from God, all those kind of things, and the Greek traditions and ancient. So there's a whole history of sexual dysfunction from all kinds of places. Next one, please. So because of all these, because of this, today, if you look into the sexual dysfunction, we're talking about an integrated biomedical and psychological treatment. So again, all these multidisciplinary treatment professionals come together. One person or one professional cannot tackle it. That's why, in my case studies and all, basically we do always a multidisciplinary team. I have psychiatrists that I work with, and other, again, sometimes I involve spiritual people also, depending on the gravity of the situation, because it is pretty, when you go into the psychosocial sexual history of the person, you will find all those nuances. It's kind of, and also on top of that, cultural factors too. Next one, please. Can move to the next one. There are, many people do not. I think this may be an issue for people, in the sense that many people do not seek treatment. There are barriers to treatment, right? Majority of the people, even in the US, they stay with the problem 6 to 7 years, and then they come to seek treatment. Majority of people, they try their own remedies, but it doesn't work. There's a lot of stigma in the United States, even seeking treatment when it comes to sexuality. Majority of people who are experiencing sexual dysfunction do not seek treatment. Barriers are social stigma. They don't want other people to know that you have a sexual issue. Feelings of shame and embarrassment attached to acknowledging the dysfunctional dysfunction. Those are kind of things for in general. Next one, please. Okay, that's it. So I didn't say more. Again, there's a whole stuff to talk about. So basically, I want to emphasize the fact that sexual dysfunction is a reality. All couples experience it one time or the other. The onset could differ. It could be situational, or it could be age-related. It could be other factors related. It's kind of very complex. It happens. There is treatment, and often people do not seek treatment. And when you refer the cases for treatment, make sure that you're sending the person to the right person. Otherwise, there are quacks out there. There are crazy people out there. They sell stuff. Again, when I was in India, I used to look. I always pay attention to the advertisement. In what way they sell products for different things. And again, this kind of big thing. There are pills and herbs and different kind of crazy stuff people do, and those are really, really. So as professionals, we have the responsibility to guide them to the right sources. So it's a phenomenon, deeper, complex, nuanced, and it can be overcome. People have done it. There are many cases that I've dealt with. I want to take some questions before I go into the other. Any thoughts, questions?
So I have a question.
Sure, Benedicta, yeah.
The guilt factor, does it contribute in a big way in the dysfunction, sexual dysfunction? I mean, you did explain.
Yeah,
does it
absolutely.
Play a role?
Yeah, absolutely. Depending on, again, that person's history. And, I remember one of my patients, a veteran, who came back from a duty from Iraq. And, he had this enormous urge to do that. And I think at the same time, there was a lot of guilt. He had killed many. When you're on the battlefield, when you kill a veteran, when you kill a soldier, that is a non-issue because you destroy enemy. But when some of the U.S. veterans are exposed to innocent killing, they take life innocently. And I remember one case was this guy said, he was on patrol in Baghdad, and according to the rules of engagement, you cannot stop when you are on patrol. He saw 3 kids standing on the middle of the road with something in their bag, and then they had to run the kids over. The kids were about 11, 9, and those kind of things. Again, these are the realities. We don't. So 11, 9, and 7, that kind of age group. And he says, every time that I go to sleep, I see these kids screaming in my face because I have similar age kids back home. So the guilt, and he could not function at all in that. So, but again, and he thought he lost his capacity to feel, his capacity to experience pleasure, orgasm. So in order to know that, sometimes people do that. Many times we see veterans going into prostitution big time. It is not so much for the sake of prostitution. What he was telling me is that I just want to know whether I'm still alive. I just want to know whether I can still feel it. And with my partner, I cannot feel. But in order to have that, to know that I'm still human, I haven't lost the capacity to experience, I go to these people. So the guilt, yes, big time can contribute. Guilt can lead to many other factors. There are, because we are still learning about human psyche and human processes, right? It's much bigger.
Same thing. I mean,
Sure,
is there a way like they could be, made to get over that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Treatment is definitely possible, depending so we need to understand what the issue is. Like I was talking about that mother who lost the capacity. Again, there was nothing going on. She was fine. I mean, from an outside perspective, daughter is going to college. That's a great thing. And husband, both of them are doing pretty well financially. But again, something happened. Again, that came from some other place. And her guilt related to, she was guilty that she exposed herself to those. She was raped by her own friends, in other words. A bunch of friends after getting drunk, So the kind of a guilt and anxiety and shame and all those things can come at some, fear also, all those things can come at certain times. So that's why, I'm saying these things are very complex, and once we identify them, then there are stories of success. People can change, and also I think people have to understand what sex is. I think it's much bigger than this. There's a play, there's a being together, there's a touch. Sometimes we advise people not to get into the sexual penetration because they need to experience the pleasure, before they get into those places. So again, there are so much more I can talk about this. It's much broader and deeper field, but our society is not educated enough to understand it.
We don't want to talk. We don't want to express.
Exactly. It's all about vaginal penile. If it doesn't happen, that's bad. I had a case. They just had gotten married. It's an Indian couple, by the way, Indian couple, arranged marriage in the US. Second day, third day, they're done. Oh my God, that's kind of crazy stuff. Like, again, because they think that since they cannot do that, vaginal penile thing, that the life is over. Of course, there are anxiety factors, fear factors, bunch of factors, all those things. Then they are working on it now. Things are getting better. So it's like, people give up easily. People don't even seek treatment. They were
No,
smart enough to go for
no,
treatment.
as you said, they are scared. They don't want to tell the
Yeah.
society they have a problem.
Right, exactly. In our society, and that's why I said, as a even in the US, the same. As India in particular, I think when people are forced into marriages, especially with parties that they don't even know, that is an injustice to those kids. And I'm saying kids because I'm old enough to say that. So I think it's a huge issue in our community. There's a lot of taboo. It's a lot of distorted thinking and craziness in our culture. It's everywhere, not only in our culture. Thank you, Benedicta. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Sure, Aisha. Yeah.
I wanted to know the two cases that you mentioned. One was the war veteran,
Yeah.
and the other was this 50-year-old mother who was raped as a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Would that also have any connection to PTSD?
Yeah,
As in,
trauma. Yeah,
one of
yeah,
the
both could
aspects
be.
of
Yeah,
PTSD
yeah,
would be.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you really get into those depths and all, sometimes when the trauma happens, PTSD happens, they kind of shut down in some ways. They don't even open the topic anymore. So, but once we go back to that trauma, revisit the trauma as an adult or with more sensitivity and with its support of the therapist, when you go back, you can address, you can come out of it in some ways. So again, there are always trauma associated with most of
Yeah,
the cases that I have seen. Yeah.
because the war veterans, one of the common things with their when they come back is some of them go through this drastic change in personality overall.
Right.
So
That's right. Yeah.
whether,
Absolutely. And we call it, there's a model which explains called Soldiers Heart Transformational Model, which kind of uses, I do a lot of work with the veterans. So, once you are battle exposed, you go through that phase when you see the destruction of life, you see as a veteran, you see the worst in life, right? Again, I work with a lot of veterans because I provide therapy for them, and then they talk about it in those circles. They talk about it, we have seen the worst. You maybe you therapist, all these great things and armchair philosophies and stuff like that. He says that's not the reality. Out there, it's a different world, and often they don't even trust us because for a good reason too, right? Because our training and our education and everything is based on models which were grounded in the mainstream community's experience clinically. But we don't have any veteran psychology developed enough to say that. That's a different world. That's a different culture. And the realities are different. So our models that we use from a psychoanalytic or behavioral thing don't go there because they don't meet well. So yeah, you're right. Trauma is a huge thing. I can talk a lot about. I presented internationally about some of these things also. Yeah.
thanks.
You're welcome. Shall we save some of your questions again? Shall we move to the next segment, and then towards the end we will have time to look at it again. Jen, could you take me to functional analytic couple therapy? Great. Excellent. Okay, this is one of the cutting edge. Just came out maybe about 10 or 15 years ago, I would say. Functional analytic couple therapy. It's a fascinating thing. It kind of brings together all the other things that we've been talking about. Okay, next one, please. I'm just going to give the bare bones of this. It's kind of, I teach this for our university, for our students again. So, fact, I call it functional analytic couple therapy. The structure is, it focuses on both the individual of the couple, the husband or a wife, and also their individual factors and relational factors, because both impact the couple system. As I said just before, sexual dysfunction in one can affect the other and the relationship in general. So it focuses on both the individual and relational. The therapist encourages partners to speak about all domains of their life, especially the most difficult. Say, for example, maladaptive patterns, right? Avoidance. They avoid talking about serious stuff. They avoid dealing with their emotional problems. They distract. Again, talk about everything. Nothing is off topic. As I'm saying, like, everything human is welcome in family therapy or in functional analytic couple therapy. Next one, please. Sorry about the background. My kids are kind of, they're having breakfast time. It's kind of crazy. Sorry about that if it is distracting you. Next one. Okay, so that's good. So the role of the functional analytic couple therapist is to be a consultant, to be a healer, to be a provocateur, which means somebody who provokes. If the client doesn't talk about an issue, he provokes or she provokes them to talk about it. Therapist provides therapeutic structure. It helps couple, again, they will talk about, they provide the structure and the safety in the room. They help couple members focus on difficult and anxiety-provoking topics and mediates to the process. The therapist also uses expert knowledge. Again, you bring a lot of, sometimes the reason why this is some sort of fact of functional analytic couple therapy is sort of a reaction to postmodern tradition in a way. I don't know, you thought about that. For postmodern is about social constructivism, right? We co-construct reality. Therapist is not above anybody. We all sit together in narrative couple therapy and solution-focused couple therapy and collaborative couple therapy. All those kind of postmodern traditions, because there is no hierarchy. We're all singing Kumbaya. Everybody's happy. Those kind of things. So this kind of fact is a kind of, it's almost like a reaction to that, because postmodern came as a result of the modern. Those expert was, but again, this combines, it's almost like a third wave in the field of, in the field of family therapy for us. Next one, please. So therapist claims his expertise, at the same time works with the client in a co-constructive way. 3 roles to bring about change. One is what the functional analytic couple therapists would do is they identify and modify recurrent problematic patterns of interaction. Say, for example, couple members are practicing emotional avoidance. Each time they come to somebody is getting angry, they don't want to stay in anger. They appease each other and then they go back. If there's an anxiety coming into the family, especially when it comes to certain issues, they change the topic. They don't go deep into that. Sometimes, they use humor, they distract themselves, or they develop psychosomatic issue. All those things are ways to get out of the problem. And in the meantime, the problem remains untouched. The real issue remains untouched. So basically, they identify and modify the recurrent problematic patterns. They look at all those maladaptive patterns. Second one is they inculcate systemic awareness. What does it mean? It means that your issue may be coming from somewhere else. Say, for example, the mother that I talked about, she cannot have sexual relationship with her husband, somebody who she trusts still but cannot function there. Nothing wrong with her physiologically, because she self-stimulate her. She masturbates. She uses different things, but again, cannot function within that relationship. So the systemic awareness means taking her back to those old times, what happened, when it happened, where it happened, when she began to connect it. Oh yeah, it happened during my college years, early college years. I was away. So again, connecting the systemic influence, systemic awareness comes in. That helps the person to really address the problems. Again, those are habits. The functional analytic couple therapists do that, connects different systems. They also challenge couples' relationship rules. Certain people come into relationship with certain rules. The rules may be, we are allowed to do this only, and we are allowed to do that only. We only go this far, but not that. Whether it comes to sex or whether it comes to discussions or whatever it is again. So there are rules, restricted rules. And these rules often come from families of origin or other generations. Again, people don't even know they function. So, for example, my wife and I fight about it sometimes. She says, we can do certain things only on certain ways, not there are certain restrictions, not about sex alone, but again, certain restrictions. Those restrictions may be coming from other places. So again, sometimes therapists would look at those rules and how that rule pisses each other off or makes each one upset, and then look at those rules. Where does that rule come from? Why is it such? Because you're 2 adults, you can change rules. You don't have to live by the rules of your parents or whatever you received from other places. You can challenge those rules within your intimacy. couple intimacy, within your family, couple relationships. So again, changing couples relationship rules that are functionally connected to the central problem. Next one, please. And also, yeah, there are functional analytic couple therapy talks so much about alliances, right? Alliance means relationship with the therapist, a relationship that goes on in the room. So individual member of the couple, like husband connecting to the therapist, wife connecting to the therapist, and both husband and wife together as a dyad connecting to the therapist, and then husband is connecting to wife again in this new place. So the focus of the functional analytic people is again connecting people within and across. So I think this is again coming from the previous models that we talked about. So it's kind of integrating in some ways all these findings. Next one, please. So this is an important factor for us, especially they focus on when it comes to clinical assessment. I'm hoping that this will be useful for you. We talked about it in different models already. They talk about 7 C's in the clinical assessment. If you're a clinical person, if you're of course, all of you are clinical people. If you're doing a clinical assessment, you would pay attention to all these 6 C's in the system, in the couple system. What is first? The conflict. What sort of conflict is going on in the system? What is this conflict about? How often they have the conflict? Again, as I said, conflict is not an issue at all. Conflict is a good thing, but again, when unmanaged conflict, when it becomes unmanageable, that creates. So again, they pay attention to the conflict. How the conflict happens, how it happens, when it happens, in what context does it happen. The second one they look into is commitment to relationship. That's a whole kind of counseling model has come up. It's called discernment counseling, call it. So basically, according to this model, you as clinicians, we need to know how committed they are to each other. Is there any future for this relationship at all? Are they really invested into this? Is it worth getting into this? Sometimes people are given up already. By the time they waited about 20 years or 10 years or whatever number of years they are into the relationship, they're given up. Now, they may have lost all hopes. One of the parties wants to drag the other person into therapy. They're going into that because of that. So commitment is an important part for us to pay attention to. How committed? Because if they are not committed, if they are not invested, just like a student, right? If a student is not invested in studies and not invested in learning every day and reflecting every day and practicing or thinking about it every day, just wait for the exam to come in, it doesn't happen. So again, commitment to the relationship is an important fact. How committed are they? Are they signs of commitment? Are they problems associated with commitment? How connected are they? Connected emotionally, kind of physically, otherwise, how connected are they? And what are the signs of their connection? Do they have any special rituals they do every day or once in a while? How often they connect? Even on the weekends, they are working Monday through Friday, they're working busy, crazy. And Saturday or Sunday, that rest days, hopefully. Do they have any connection, any rituals they have? We have our own, my family, we have our own. What sort of personality do they have? Personality, style, character. Some are so direct and so escalated and want to address the problem right away. The other kind of slows or avoids, waits for the right occasion and which never comes through. Again, what is their character in terms of presenting issues or talking about things? What is the context in which they live? Context in terms of family, family context. The different transitions that they may be going through. So it could be related to the family of origin. Their interference. Family of origin is constantly interfering with the decision of the couple members. They're telling them how to raise their own children, grandchildren. And the cultural factors. There are some cultural factors too. Again, India's special culture, how it affects our couple relationship. What is allowed? Can you kiss your partner in front of your child? Of course not. Those kind of things. Again, lip locks and all in front of the children. I have never seen it in Indian context, but again, in the US, you see it all the time. It's kind of normal process. Even children ask parents, "Can you please kiss?" Those kind of things. My kids ask us to do that. And the developmental factors. Like for example, developmentally, how they are sometimes, when they come together to get married, cognitively, emotionally, they may be all in the same place. But as they get older, they are developmentally changing. Age and other factors come in. This is how develop. Familially, again, their context. In what kind of context in which they live? They live in a private home by themselves, or they live in a home with other people. Again, multi-generational family. Sometimes people live with multi-generational, grandparents and parents and all this. And the biological factors and the medical factors, any illness, diabetes, depression, hypertension, all those. So basically, we have to understand the context to understand when you do the clinical assessment. That's so. In other words, I'm saying bringing all of them together. And the causality of causality and the therapeutic change. What is sometimes every partner has his or her own theory of what is happening in the room. He would say, oh, well, she is such a, whatever, naggy person, she nags me all the time. That comes from her mother. Of course, they're all crazy family anyway. That was a mistake that for me to get married to. Then she would say, oh, what a crazy guy he is. Look at him, who's talking now. He's an asshole. Anyway, people say many things. They have their own personal theories based on their observations. Again, we have to understand what those theoretical frameworks. It's not the therapist theory alone, but again, their partners' theories of the origin and maintenance of the problem. What keeps the problem going? Oh, he and his stupid phone, he's with that all the time. And once he gets off that phone, he'll be fine. Again, there are theories, and there's a lot of credence to that. Right? There's a lot of value to that. Again, in the clinical assessment phase, you have to pay attention to all that. And also the transference and countertransference factors. I use countertransference a lot, in the sense that they are not problems. They are really helpful. Countertransference in the sense that, say, for example, if you remember object relations, couple therapy and all, they use this kind of dynamics quite a bit because, say, for example, you're in sessions with the client, and the client is getting extremely angry and upset with you to the therapist, taking all that aggression towards you. And from a therapeutic perspective, that is useful information for me. Of course, she's not getting angry with me necessarily. Maybe I'm reminding her of her father figure or her, whatever the previous husband she had trouble with. And then, so that kind of mindset, the therapist allows that kind of, if you think about object relations, therapist creates such a context in which through free associations or those kind of dynamics come to play. When that dynamics come to play, her anger, her upset, her obsession for me, or her, those kind of things are useful for me because I can tune into that system, into the psychic system, where I can probably get a sense of what is happening. And that is not a conclusive thing for me. I can use that hunch and formulate it as a question. So I could ask her, when in your last experience you were so mad like this before, when somebody brought a topic to you? So again, you can use that information using the countertransference. So kind of course, that's a very specific area. So basically what I'm saying is functional analytic couple use all these. For me, this is rich. Usually this is my kind of template when I work with couples, because it gives us a lot of rich data about all these dimensions before we go into the fourth session with a couple. Next one, please. Goal is to change both the individual. So we want the individual members to change. In other words, we want them to reclaim their individuality, right? We talked about it. Healthy couples are those who celebrate their own individuality, their giftedness. At the same time, they couple them, the unity. So goal is to change both the individual so that he can or she can claim her or his individuality in the relationship, at the same time, their connectedness with each other. So again, it's coming back from the previous models. To create a deepened self-perception. Like, for example, like people in the relationship of the marriage, they get to know who they are, right? We know each other, we know ourselves, we discover ourselves in the context of a relationship. Like, for example, I did not know that I was crazy until I married my wife. She tells me about my idiosyncrasies and my craziness. I did not know I was living without anybody. So again, my self-perception, who I am, my giftedness, my craziness, all my problems, I will become aware of that. For me, that's an important thing for me to know my limitations and my strengths. And also through therapy, people come to know their partners in a much deeper way. She's not just somebody who is the mother of my kids. She's not just somebody who goes to work every day. She's not just somebody who lives with me under the roof. She's not somebody who makes. So again, there is much deeper stuff going on. So basically, therapy is a process in which people get to know each other in a safe context. As Susan Johnson would say, emotionally focused people would say, in that with vulnerabilities, and you find your strength. And addressing the crisis is the initial goal. But again, people may come up with the presenting problem. They're upset with each other, communication problem. That's only the kind of tip of the iceberg. There's much deeper going on. So therapy is a sacred place where people can get to know each other. They can discover who they are, and they can muster up the courage to be who they want to be. So there are lots of great things. For me, that's one of the coolest things about relationship, right? Relationship can kind of flood, it can make you grow significantly. And also, by the same token, it can destroy you. It's like atomic power, right? You can use atomic power to light up the whole city, or you can destroy the whole city, right? In both ways. So I think relationships are extremely important to grow personally and to thrive. We are like inexhaustible treasures. I believe that very much. Like, when people get into the right relationship, they really grow. They go into the different dimensions. They discover who they are, because we can discover ourselves only in the context of relationship with marriage. Sometimes people get into this kind of relationship which becomes destructive, because they just die in themselves. They destroy each other. We have seen plenty of that. So again, therapy is a great opportunity if you do it well. Past that. The initial crisis or initial presenting problem, people can really go into the real thing. Next one, please. A therapist uses a wide range of theoretical orientations. As I said earlier, one theory doesn't cut it. It doesn't capture everything. Like psychodynamic doesn't capture everything. Behavioral approaches don't capture everything. Cognitive approaches don't capture everything. Emotionally focused doesn't capture everything. Again, we need to have a wide range. That's why functional analytic brings all of them together. Therapist uses techniques with an emphasis on enhancing relational meaning. The purpose is not just to let's practice, let's do an exercise now, or let's do this technique and that technique. Sometimes I get annoyed with some of the clients talking about, or clinicians talking about, this technique is more important than it. Technique doesn't matter much at all. The purpose of what is the purpose of the technique? Technique is to enhance relationship. And you cannot just use it as an exercise alone. It has to be with a specific purpose, with a specific goal. And again, as therapists, we need to think about all these things. Client therapist role is critical because clinician provides safety. The couple may not be able to talk about their issues back at home. They may escalate. They may go offhand. Again, therapists can create that, as Winnicott and other people would say, safety containers, or kind of holding environment, holding context in a way. Therapist self-discloses only when it is clinically relevant. Again, you can. That's postmodernism in a way, right? You talk about your stuff if it is relevant. I often use it in my teaching. I give you a lot of examples about my own craziness, about my wife and my family, my kids. That's kind of part of again, we self-disclose in a relevant way. Even in the therapy, you cannot just talk about everything and anything. If it is relevant, you talk about it. Otherwise, don't. That's what functional analytic people would say. Next one, please. Therapists focus on and tracks clinically relevant behaviors. This is a very cool. I can spend the whole day on this one. CRBs, clinically relevant behaviors. What it means is, people pay attention to suppose you're seeing a patient. Pay attention to what is happening in the session. What are the problems that you're seeing in the session? For example, she's talking about something very sensitive, and he's crossed-eyed, across the arm. He's defensive. He's looking elsewhere. He's kind of distracted. He's shaking his head. All those these are important information. Like we call it meta messages, right? Messages and meta messages. Those who are familiar with it. Message means I can tell my wife that I love you. That's a word, message, content of the words. Meta means that goes with the word. Like I can tell her, oh, I love you very much. Or, in a sarcastic way, I can say that. So my word could be all right, perfect. But the meta message, the emotions, the manner, tone in which I communicate could be totally opposite, right? Totally. He would say, I love her very much. But when she speaks to me, I get, kind of irritated and all. I show the signs of irritation. Although I didn't say anything, he said. No, you didn't say anything, but your body language, your mannerism. So pay attention again. Problems occurring in session. as a clinician, you note that, not just the words that they say, but again, even maybe a side note somewhere. He is kind of he kind of almost he seems irritated. Or I write some kind of, if you're a qualitative researcher, especially if you're doing ethnography and all, we talk about field notes, right? In the same way, you kind of write little side notes about this kind of mannerism that you're seeing, because when you process the case later on in your private moment, you may want that information. So CRB1 is important. Second one is improvements in client problems occurring in the session. So 2 sessions later, 3 sessions later, you address his restlessness and stuff like that. Now he's not showing that body difference. So you see the improvement. So note that as well in your future session. And third one is CRB3, clinically relevant behaviors, kind of client's interpretation of the behavior. Again, client is interpreting. So look at that. Tom is kind of, he doesn't like what I'm saying. Look at his face. So again, pay attention to, so you are paying attention to the behavior. At the same time, you're also paying attention to the interpretation of the partner about the other partner in the room. I hope it makes sense, right? Next one, please. Therapist presents case conceptualization to the clients after, so again, this is what the typical thing that we do again in the US, 4th session. So you attend first, second, and third sessions, collected data, and you present your conceptualization. So yeah, you have 5 problems to work on. But then I think, so the therapist, after collecting data, the first 3 sessions, goes into the 4th session and says, I'm seeing these issues, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 issues, or 3 issues, whatever issues again. I think you would benefit by going into the 3rd one. What do you think? They would say, well, that's kind of collaborative sense. So they would say, well, we want to go to the 2nd one first. They would tell you, rather than the 3rd one. Okay, then you come to some sort of agreement. And then your sessions are going to be based on that thing that we agreed on, especially mostly the client's agreement. That's more important. So 6 sessions, the next 6 sessions would be based on that, addressing that one. So it goes on. Again, presence, case conceptualization. Therapist invites clients to assume responsibility for their parts. Again, if Tom is kind of restless and those are kind of the functional analytic couple therapist would invite each party to own in what way they contribute to the problem. Again, not the blaming the other party, not just kind of visitors. De Jazer and company would say solution focused. Some people are just visitors, some people are just clients. There are differences. Again, everybody wants to be. Again, every party has to own what they're doing. Oh, I am all perfect. There's nothing wrong with me. My problem is with my wife. Problem is with my husband. They cannot say that. Everybody contributes to the problem. So it's kind of systemic thing. And the next one, please. These rules are adapted from kind of functional. Again, they talk about 5 rules. I don't want to get into all of this. Again, just kind of watch for clinically relevant behavior, CRBs we talked about. Pay attention to both verbal and non-verbal CRBs, right? Again, I talked about message and meta message. He says, I had a case, very interesting case. And the case was, I work with a lot of addiction. That's my doctoral dissertation is all about addiction, research on addiction. So I used to see a lot of patients on addiction. So this family came to me. I'm giving an example of the real issues, verbal and non-verbal factors. The mother was abusing substances, and she got caught during one of those police DUI, driving under the influence, and she was sent to jail. While in jail, she killed somebody, by the way. While in jail, she went through the treatment programs, and she was doing well. And again, no, I'm sorry, she didn't kill. She hurt somebody so badly, and they were debilitated for life. I'm mixing up a couple of cases. Sorry about that. So, and then she went to jail, and while in the treatment program, addiction treatment program, she fell in love with somebody there in the group. 12-step group, she fell in love with somebody. And then she came back and said that I'm done here. And then she began to live with Joe. In the meantime, Dad, who was a music professor, very accomplished guy, and with 2 young kids. And he was devastated. So he took the responsibility to raise these kids. And the kids were about 12, 13, 14, and all those kind of things. And then after a while, she began to do better in the meantime. So in the US, we have this kind of family union. family unification. I mean, like, court systems in the US believe that both parents have to be together, not under the same roof, but they should be part of the kids' development, because kids should have access to both kids, just like in India. So they came into therapy, and then mom began to do better. So mom had no place in the system. Mom was kicked out. In the meantime, the older child became almost like a parentified child. She became almost like a mother, a wife, not really sexually, but again, dad and these two girls hung out everywhere. They lived their life. So the mom wanted. So again, mom was doing better. So dad said, okay, we'll allow you to be back into the system, but not with us. You can still co-parent with us. That's an ideal thing, and all those things. And everybody bought. That's how they came to me. Anyway, as the sessions went on, mom began to show great improvements, great connection, and with the kids, and two daughters, and mothers really, really they began to do better. Took about a couple of years for us to get there, and then went on. In the meantime, dad began to be restless and annoyed. Talking about nonverbals often. And often he would say things, she's like this, getting too much into it. She shouldn't be like. So he thought mother was almost taking over. She was out. In the meantime, he'd raised these kids. He kind of sacrificed many things. He didn't get married. He drove them to ballet classes and games and schools and all those things. So she was gone for several years. Now she's coming back and she wants to take over. He doesn't want to give that up. And finally, she relapsed, of course. Mother relapsed because of the kind of rejections and different pieces. I'm just kind of summarizing many. The point is, sometimes people may say one thing. Oh, I want my wife, not my wife, the parent, ex-wife, to be part of this. That's a talk they do. But when the changes begin to happen in the room, they don't want that change. Don't you think that, like, I want my husband to be involved in my life. I want my wife to speak up, take more responsibility, some of the couples would say. But when they begin to take responsibility, when they begin to be active and doing some great skills and improvements, the husband doesn't want that anymore. He gets annoyed. He feels kind of what do you call? What's what? I'm just he loses it. Jealousy and different things come around. I can tell you many cases about that as well. So the point is, there is always, people intend one thing when they come into therapy, and in the course of the therapy, when things change, they get uncomfortable about that. They get frustrated with that. In fact, they are the ones who asked for the change. Like the husband asked for the change. Not the husband, the parent asked for the change, but the change happened. They didn't want the change. So they dislike the change that they themselves wanted in the first place. It happens, right? In couples, I love Joe because Joe is so assertive. She would tell me, Joe is such a confident person. He goes and he commands the space in the room. But now I live with Joe. I don't want that anymore. I don't want Joe. Like the people change, right? I mean, often we don't really know what we really want. Often that's, it's kind of funny thing, but that's a joke also. People say, don't pray, because if you pray, then you may get what you're praying for, then you may not want that anymore. I mean, that's a silly thing. Next one, please. Evoke clinically relevant behaviors. Say, for example, there are things that you see in the room. So what's your reaction to what your partner just said? So she was very vulnerable about certain things when she said it, and the husband really went down. So again, we call attention to that. What's your reaction to your partner just said? What do you think your wife is feeling now as she hears you express your whatever and that you're sad about the situation? Again, there are many things that cross-check with partners, and the purpose is to make sure that not only you as a clinician paying attention to what is in the room, but at the same time getting the perception of the clients in the room. What are you thinking? What are you hearing? We do that in some cases, but again, in this particular model, they talk a lot about that. The next one, I think we have actively respond to clinically relevant behaviors. Again, if they show any sort of, again, you're talking about meta messages, anything that you notice, oh, you seem to be uncomfortable. It may be your feeling, but again, bring it to the room. Make that observation. Don't hold it. You seem to be angry. You seem to be distracted. you don't seem to be here. Again, bring that rather than holding it and become passive aggressive, like, just therapist to the client. Again, bring all that you notice to the room, in a careful way, in a caring way. I'm rather. Carl Whittaker would say, like, the guy, the experience, symbolic, experiential therapy, would say, if you care enough for the client, you can bring anything to the client. If you deeply care, you can push them to the limit. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? If you really care, if you deeply care that your client matters to you, you have a good relationship with the client, then you can ask hard questions to the client, deeper questions to the client. So again, actively respond to clinically relevant behaviors in terms of all those things. Next one, please. Notice therapist effects on each partners and on the dyad. Again, we do that, like, in what way is it helping you as we move forward. Again, check those kind of effects. If the client is beginning to be disengaged with you in the 6th and 7th and 4th and 8th session, then you may want to know that, in other words, you're asking feedback. Is it working for you? And in the US, we do that. We have this, after every session, we ask them for the feedback on a form, so we know we can adjust our interventions in certain ways. Next one, please. Interpret I think I would say this as the last one, the most important thing. There are many variables that are happening. Variables means phenomenon. It could be a phenomenon. It could be something that is happening. Interpret variables affecting clients' behavior and plan generally. For example, understanding the interaction between variables and self-problem. So the wife is nagging him in the room, or always criticizing him in the room, or blames him, his lack of parenting responsibility, lack of parenting involvement in the room. And when each time he hears that kind of thing, so here she goes again, and he kind of closes up. So those are two variables. Nagging as a variable in the room. What sort of impact does that nagging have in the room, and especially to the central problem? In what way that nagging is contributing to their couple conflict, for example? So as a clinician, you may pay attention to such variables. Another variable is crying. Again, she cries. When something very deep, she kind of goes into the emotional place, she kind of floods and emotions. He gets mad at the whole thing. Here you go again. That's how she does it all the time. She doesn't want it. When I ask hard questions, she cries. Variable crying, its impact on really talking about the real issues, in what way he perceives that problem. Think about any such variables in the room. Pay attention to these there are many variables like that. For example, for me, I pay attention in the room. Sometimes people talk about, they talk about their competency all the time. I did this, I did that, I did that, those kind of things. Competency is a variable. But that one person's competency as a variable may be affecting, emasculating our partner in some ways. Her over functioning and over whatever the competencies are about. So pay attention to these kind of variables and its impact in the system. In other words, it's almost like you're watching something carefully, not by the words alone, but again, the words and the meta messages that are coming through. Pay attention, lock up certain variables. I always try to do that. A couple of variables I pay attention to. What variables cause that reaction from him or her? Those are the important things to pay attention to. And also pay attention to the extra therapeutic factors, which is kind of very interesting factor. They come to us once a week for 1 hour or 55 minutes, or 45 minutes, or 50 minutes. And they go back home to their lives. They go to their works, and we're talking about 1 hour of every week they come to us. So our 1 hour may have an impact in the therapeutic process. At the same time, there are other factors going on in the world they live in. If you remember ecobiological models of Bronfenbrenner's and team, the kind of mesosystem and microsystems. I'm sorry about this phone. Somebody picked it up. Okay. So all those. So pay attention to these extra. Extra means outside the therapy room factors, extra therapeutic factors, and their relation to the central problem. Say, for example, we had a client yesterday at the clinic, and she has extreme anxiety about everything. Anxiety related to her family, anxiety related to her boss. Her boss is out there to get her. She's paranoid also. All those kind of things are part of it. And one of our interns was working, and then and, the intern is a kind of funny person. She's very smart. At the same time, she starts with the some exercises and stuff. That's great. It's a good thing. And just before the session, the client said, I just got the news that I won't have my job because our company is folding. Many companies are folding in the US because of these COVID and the recessions and all those bunch of factors. So in the meantime, the therapist had prepared something already to work on for that particular case. But what she shared with the therapist at that time, I had to jump in. Oh, somebody's talking. Okay, so sometimes so that particular I'll wait. Yeah. Okay, that particular factor which came to the room, that is worth paying attention to. That's a reality. That's a struggle, and she's off balance, off kilter because of that something that happened, and we have to pay attention to that. Extra therapeutic factors have an impact, and sometimes again we may do a lot of preparation for the therapy, but when a client brings something catastrophic, or a catastrophe comes into the room, then you have to pay attention to that. That becomes the primary importance, not your treatment plan for the other, what you're planned for. So again, be ready, be flexible to pay attention to those factors that may have critical importance to the therapeutic system. You're working on communication skills with the clients, and that's a goal that you agreed upon. And in the session that you realize that she talked about sexual trauma. She did not share that with you until 7th session. You had no clue about it. And she's going to, she just in the midway, out of nowhere, she felt so comfortable. She just dropped that bomb there. Then you have to pay attention to that, not your communication stuff. So basically that's a flexibility. That's what this model is saying. I think that's all I wanted to say. I can say more about it. I'm going to end it here. The point is, we talked about different models. This kind of model is very close to my heart. It it brings together everything that we have talked about. It talks about the importance of clinically relevant behaviors that we have to pay attention to, cross-checking with the clients, getting their perception and experience what's happening in the room, and even paying attention to the extra therapeutic factors coming from outside. So again, you have to be really mindful of, one has to be really mindful of all these factors when we work with a case. There are many things going on. And sometimes clients don't even know why it is happening. That woman I talked about, that mother, she did not know why was having a trauma. She could not even connect with her husband. She was traumatized by her husband. But Tom said, what did I do? I did nothing. Can you specify what did I do? What did I wrong? It's not about that. It is coming from somewhere else out there, right? So again, we have to pay attention. We have to be cognizant of all these factors. So for that, we need to have a broader repertoire, expertise related to different theories and models, so that we can draw, we can pick, we can go to places. So that's why I said early on in the beginning, don't worry about technique. Sometimes clinicians, when I was at Christ, some people are so excited about, they want to know techniques. Techniques is nothing. Techniques, before you get to techniques, the techniques are for a reason. Techniques come from certain orientations. Understand the orientation, where it comes from. Understand the philosophy. I think that's more important. Then once we have that, then we can maneuver, we can navigate through all difficult things. I hope it makes sense. Okay, I'm going to be quiet now. Questions, time for questions.
Hello, sir. It's Divya here.
Sure, Divya. Yes, I can. Yeah.
My question is about sexual dysfunction. I will not call it sexual dysfunction, but if one partner comes out and during therapy, or the first 3 sessions are over and we are going through therapy, and somewhere in the 5th or the 6th session, we come to know that the problem was homosexuality. Mm-hmm. That is when the husband comes out with the fact that, he's homosexual, and that is the crux of the issue. Mm-hmm. So will it not be a counter indicator for therapy anymore?
No, in fact, no, it's not at all. You're talking about, it's not contraindicative at all. Actually, that's a very helpful information, because there was something that was out there in this couple relation, did the partner know about it, or was he bisexual or just homosexual?
Homosexual, and
Okay,
did
so he was
not
more
know about
same-sex oriented. Okay, yeah, yeah. I think then it's a real issue. Then I think Divya, the point is always is therapy is all about coming to the reality, the realism, right? This is the realism right there. And if it is the case, so I think we are helping clients to figure out, or to help them, or facilitate their thinking processes associated with that. How are they going to deal with this truth? How are they going to live with the truth? And then the wife may say, I cannot afford it. I cannot afford it to let him go because of the cultural factors. I have children. It's an embarrassment to society. So you may want to unearth or get that information, all that is related to fears and trepidations and all those kind of concerns and all those things are they're all topics for therapeutic processes. um, I think we cannot just let them go saying that it is contraindicative, I cannot deal with it. No, 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 no. I think we must deal with it. If we don't deal with it, they may not, they are looking for help, even come to that term. Can you imagine? I'm not talking about your case in particular. Sometimes it takes a long time for therapists, so the clients, to realize this is a real problem. I'm sitting on this problem for the last 6 or 7 years, and now I'm finally mustering up courage to go to somebody and disclose this information, and that person says no. That's what it is. So again, anything human is welcome in the room. The question is, can you deal with it yourself? Probably not you, I'm saying. If I cannot deal with that problem, I said I have certain issues with certain pedophiles, I have problems with that, and I cannot be myself when I'm in the room because it triggers me in many kinds of ways. In spite of the many work that I've done, I still work on it. So I think, so if you cannot deal with that, refer the case to somebody. Don't abandon them. Or contraindicative, yes, for you because of many reasons, personal therapeutic competency related stuff, if it is. But in the real realm of therapy, there's nothing contraindicative, nothing. You may
But
pass it
the
to somebody.
wife, yeah, but if the wife is like, it comes as a shock to her and she doesn't want to. Now
Oh,
it's
okay.
like this.
Yeah.
I think now this person cannot have a real intimate relationship with me because he is homosexual.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all this,
Yeah.
then how will they want to continue the marriage? If
Yeah.
she doesn't want to continue the marriage, then
Right. Then that's a decision that she has to make, right? Or she
okay.
has to live with. You don't make those decisions, right? With therapists, we are always, one of the things about one of the 5 principles of ethics is autonomy, right? Every
Okay.
client has the autonomy. We have to assert it. We have to help them. So they make the decision. So can they consult with us? Absolutely. When they consult with us, they can talk about their fears, their barriers, their concerns and worries. And so as a therapist, we have to create space for them to go through, to unearth, because outside the therapy room they may not have anybody to talk about it, because they cannot talk about it with their friends or their family members or anyone. So the therapeutic place is a place they can really examine their consciousness, examine their conscience, examine their responsibility, examine the dilemma. In what course of action can I take? I think those, once people examine all those things, then they may have the courage to live with it or live
No.
away from it. Those,
Yes.
yeah, those are the
Okay.
things. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Divya. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. It's a
I
huge.
had a.
Mhm.
Go ahead, finish it up.
No, go ahead, Isha. Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm done.
I was actually wondering when you mentioned the cases that you have dealt with,
Mhm.
there would be a lot of cases where it did not go as you expect, like as the therapist
Correct.
expected. And
Correct.
many a
Absolutely.
times it happens considering the stigma that couples drop out.
Mhm.
So, like, how do you deal with that disappointment, and what is the ratio, like the success stories and the disappointment, but like what's the ratio also?
Yeah. So you're asking 2 questions. So if
Hmm.
the therapy is not successful, in what way does it impact the therapist and the therapist's competence? How do I
Hmm.
deal with that? And also, if the client, the clients worked and finally we are getting into some place, some deeper place, some uncomfortable place, and one of them gives up or they give up and they shut down and they leave the therapy. So what happens to those? Let's take the first one. I think I have my success rate is, I would say, about 62%. I mean, again, I was looking at the numbers recently. Again, I've not always been successful, 38%, because there are cases that I could not crack it. for many reasons. And the problem was so complex, and I couldn't get it. And I don't do it alone. I have a whole team. I have two of my professors that I studied under, Dr. Steve Anderson of UConn and also Dr. Whitaker. These are trained by the best of the best, like Haley's and Medanas and all those team, and then Whitaker and team. So they are my mentors, and they continue to be mentors. So I bring some of the cases. We have case consultation, with them, and then so that's one thing. So I tried to examine the problem, try to look at it. I have psychiatrist friends. I consult with them without mentioning names, of course. We have a team. And then we could not figure it out what it was. So those happens. How it affects me? Well, it used to affect me very badly before, because I thought, oh my God, I should start a coffee shop. This is not for me. I shouldn't be a therapist anymore. Maybe I should start some other business. What a failure I am. But that was my experience during my master's program. Then I went into the Ph.D., my doctoral program. That kind of opened my eyes. And my supervisors would say, bring us the worst tape that you have, the worst case, how we failed, how you messed up, all that stuff, because we run away from all that stuff, right? Because I learned a lot from those failures. There's some interesting books about it in family therapy. Failure, the title of the book is, I think it is Failure. So how we can, all these big therapists, competent therapists talked about failures, the cases of failures. They never could understand what it was. So I think coming to sense with our reality of competence is a matter of growth, right? Nobody gets into competency place. It's a process, especially we are dealing with the human realities. Human realities are extremely complex as of now. So we will never have complete mastery over it. We are still sexual dysfunction we talked about. We still don't have everything about it. 120 years of research, we still don't know about it a lot. Addiction, 100 plus years of billions and trillions of dollars go into that, but still we scratch at the surface. The point is, human complexity is so deep and profound, and we will never. So if we fail in delivering what we hoped that we would deliver, maybe you need to learn more about it. Again, what happened, and did you do your best? Do you understand? So again, competence, it doesn't kill me as it used to, but every now and then, sometimes it hits me. What happened to the couple who decided to leave? Well, we cannot. Usually there's an exit interview we do them. Can you tell us, for the sake of our clinic, what really? Sometimes the therapist may not do that personally. Maybe somebody else will call that person and say, what was your experience like at the clinic? What happened? The therapist was crazy. He thought he was full of himself, or he didn't know what shit he was talking about. They'll give you feedback. Those are important information for us. So again, in some cases, often what happens is couple therapy is so deep, and it's very uncomfortable to go to those deeper places where they may have to bring about change in their life. So they get uncomfortable and they shut down, they leave. What I would conclude from that is they're not ready yet. They're not ready, because this is not the peaches and ice cream. This is hard work, right? Any self-examination is hard work, and we run away from hard work often. But again, therapy is hard work. So I think people are not ready sometimes. Those are the answers for me.
Coming to Indian context,
yeah.
Like you mentioned, the two barriers are social stigma, and there was one more thing. But in Indian context, I think there's one more thing. Like couples usually say, we can handle it on our own. Like I have seen, I have seen my parental generation or grandparents generation. They're like, we don't need to talk about it. It's very personal. It's been between me and my husband. So we don't need to talk about it. And even when we bring that idea, they're like, we handled it. You also need to handle it on your own. Don't need to go to therapy.
Okay. Oh, okay. So, okay. I thought, okay. So you're talking about people decide, well, we'll manage it, we'll deal with it on our own. It's outside the therapeutic context, right? Not in the therapy. They're not saying to the therapist, okay, we will manage.
No.
You know what? Okay. It happens outside. Okay, got it. Okay. Yeah. I mean, people, there could be many reasons. Maybe there's a good reason that's not a problem for them. Or it may be a problem for outsiders, or I mean, these are realities, Isha, of course, yes. I agree with that. If they are not ready, we cannot do much about it as therapists, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome, of course. Hey, Jen, can we move to the last segment? We have just about 28 minutes I want to run through it quickly and spend some time. Yeah. It's a culmination. Affective reconstructive is a culmination of things that we just talked about.
Just a minute.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, this is again one of my favorites ones. Again, I have certain favorite ones, like there are 16 theories I draw from in couple therapy and about 8 or 9 from family. So affective reconstructive is one of my favorites also. Next one, please. The word affective reconstructive, that's a kind of interesting phrase, right? Affective reconstructive. What does it mean? It means reconstructing. Something is messy in the way I feel, in the way I think about. Something is messed up. That may be coming from my family of origin, that may be coming from my early socialization, that may be coming from my own traumatic experience in life, or that may be coming from my lived reality as an adult. Something is messed here. So I need to reconstruct it. How do I reconstruct it? So in other words, affective reconstructive therapy. That's therapy all about reconstruction, process of understanding and reconstructing. So that's one of the coolest things about human realities, right? As conscious beings, if we are conscious beings, as conscious beings, we can change many things. Not everything, but we can change. We can reconstruct the mental psychological makeup in many ways. That's kind of neuroplasticity and all those neural research science telling us about that even more now in the last 10, 15 years. So couple members often wait for a long time, as I said already. Okay, you can move forward. I thought of this. I already introduced it different ways before. You can move to the next section. Okay, couples' problems are diverse and complex, right? Depending on therefore, an integration of different theoretical is critical. The different theories are critical. Say, for example, we use psychodynamic theories that to help both the individual and couple to look at their individual and enduring problematic interpersonal themes, especially more intrapsychic themes. We use experiential techniques to promote people's awareness, right? The experiential models and all those talk about it. Sometimes people are not aware. People are emotional awareness. They may not be good in expressing their anger, for example. They don't know how to do with their anger. They don't know how to regulate their anger. They either shut down or go crazy about that regulation, or they may not know how to talk with confidence. Whatever, again, it's kind of emotional awareness. To promote emotional awareness, we use experiential. Cognitive, we use to target dysfunctional belief systems. People may be living in certain cognitive distortions. You may have taken a lot of courses on that. There are many several types of cognitive distortions, rationalization, all those bunch of generalization, all those kind of bunch of things. And there are behavioral strategies are used to promote certain new patterns of behavior to facilitate change. So basically, we're saying to change a human person, what do we need? So the answer is it depends. It depends. Some people may need some cognitive insight. Some people may need some behavioral changes. Some people may need both behavioral change and insight to bring about change. So the point is, all of these theoretical traditions, psychodynamic, experiential, cognitive, behavioral, and all those things by themselves do not address the complexity of human reality. So the point is we need to kind of integrate something. Okay, next one, please. Interventions become effective when a therapist has a solid grounding across diverse theoretical approaches. That's exactly what I've been arguing all along. Techniques matter nothing. Again, we need to be really rooted in those kind of approaches. Then we will be able to navigate through those difficult terrains, right? Because therapy is such a complex thing. Again, we have to be really, that's why I would tell my students, theories may be boring for you at this time. It doesn't matter. Try to understand the best way. Ask questions, learn, because they are not there to bore you to death. They are there to prepare you to take they're like, bricks for a building, blocks for we need those kind of layers. So they are important things. Next one, please. So I want to talk about just kind of help you conceptualize this kind of issue in a way. Clinicians talk about different ways of when we ask them, what kind of approach do you use? They say, oh, I'm an eclectic therapist. What does it mean? Some would say, I'm an integrative therapist. Some would say, I'm a pluralistic therapist. I'm more of a pluralistic therapist myself. So pluralism, integration, and eclecticism all assume that no one single theory will cut it. You need to have a, that's the reason why people become eclectic, right? One doesn't really do it. So let's look at each of them, what they mean. And I just want to ask you this question. Who are you? What are you? Are you an eclectic or integrative or pluralistic person? Again, let's listen. Let's hear what they are. Okay, next one, please. What is an eclectic is? Eclecticism is a technical blend of various methods without any unifying framework. Here, the clinician is well-intentioned, but lacks a systematic and organized way of thinking about it. Say, for example, just give an example. Today, I'm in a good mood to use solution focused, so I'm going to use it. When the client comes in, I'm going to use some. I'll ask exception questions, amplification, all those kind of bunch of things, a miracle question, all those kind I will ask. Next week, I'm in a different mood. I may talk about something else. Because the point is, there is an interesting research. The interventions clinicians use depend on the clinician's mood of the time. If I am going through an emotional crisis in my own family, when my client comes, I will project it onto the client in some ways, and I may use emotionally focused approaches. I mean, I'm not just making it up. If the people, so what is addressed in the room is very much dependent, most of the time, not always, dependent on what the clinician is feeling at that time, on that day. So we have to come to that. So people pull and push from different places without any sequence, depending on their mood, without any. Okay, that's eclecticism. Eclecticism is pulling from different places. We are not trashing it. We are saying it is useful because they are talking about one theory doesn't do it. So let me do that. But there is no overarching thing. Next one, please. Integrated approach. Integration is an intentional, yes, like the previous one, but a deliberate conceptual synthesis is there. What does it mean? That here the goal is to create a unified conceptual framework that synthesizes the best of one or two theories. They don't take more than, they don't pull it from all places. I have about 16 in couples and 8 in families, so I'm going to put all those 18 plus 6. No, I may choose one or two for this particular case. But those kind of things are, I have some sort of framework. But still, again, I use some sort of framework for that. Maybe, I'll use Whitaker's this or Satir's that one. And these are the names of the kind of models. Okay, next one, please. This is the more advanced form, to my mind, more informed pluralistic approach. Here, it's like the previous informed pluralism is characterized by drawing on effective methods from across theoretical frameworks. So that's one thing. Second is, it is the integration of both eclecticism and integration in the sense it goes one step further. It involves deliberate selection of theories and sequencing of theories. That's a fun part. I'll give you an example. So pluralism is all about sequencing. How are you going to sequence your theories when you work with this particular case? I have a case. She's dealing with her frustration with her husband. She is talking about, I think I mentioned to you earlier today, that she's talking about her husband is lazy, he's not looking for a job, he just lost his job, he's sitting on unemployment, she's the only breadwinner, all those kind of things are happening. So she started talking about that. And if I'm a therapist, I could say, okay, there is something going on here. Maybe she can from a behavioral perspective, I can think about maybe she can go a little easy on her husband, give him a little benefit of the doubt, maybe some encouragement. Don't just overfunction in this case and all. I can go that way. That's one thing. But after getting her, information about the genogram and the family origin history, what happened between her father and her mother, what was the kind of relationship between father and mother had, what she learned from that. Her father was a total loser. He was a lazy bum most of the time. He had a Ph.D., but he was not getting a job at that point. His Ph.D. was in some, I don't know what it was, but something very esoteric, something great, and it didn't do much in the job market. So he pretty much sat at home. In the meantime, her mother would go to work three times. She was a nurse. She was doing jobs in couple of places. She brought money. She was a breadwinner. So this woman lived with a father who did not function well as a provider, in the room. So now, fast forward, she's about 32 years old now. They have hit a place in their life. The husband is sitting at home. He's sitting at home for the last 2 months, no job. And he's not even applying for unemployment benefits. She's getting frustrated with him. And so if I did not know the background about what happened, again, so we brought into the room. That's the case. Again, hey, Deborah, do you see any parallel between your husband and your father? She said, oh my God. She says, oh my God, I did not. Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, when we went through the whole process, there's an insight came in. So basically, the point I'm saying is, when you collect data, you can go in a behavioral route, helping her try to regulate herself and stuff like that. Or once you connect to the other place, you can sequence it. So I decided to sequence in the way I wanted to go into the family of origin first at that segment of the therapy. So we used family of origin focused approaches. There are a bunch of them actually. I sequenced it that as first, and then I sequenced it to the behavioralism, and then I sequenced it to others. Again, we can mix and match depending on basically I'm saying is, after getting the data, you can sequence it. Do you want to go to the behavioral route first, or family of origin route, or you want to go to more present focus? This is, as Gottman would say, it's all about present focus. Right now, pay attention to what is happening. How are you communicating to each other? Gottman would say that is present focus. You can do that. So again, depending on you have a lot of flexibility, right? And nothing is wrong actually. So the question is about what is the best fit in this case. That's what pluralism is all about, sequencing the way you want to sequence it. And okay, you can move forward a couple more and then I'll end it. I think you get the idea of what I'm talking about. Yeah, okay, we talked about that. Keep moving. So always we need to explore the themes and interpret the themes. In that particular woman's case, theme was her annoyance with incapable men. Men are incompetent. Men are good for nothing. Men just make babies. Men just contribute sperm. Men are useless. Angry, I shouldn't say angry feminist. I mean, that feminist is much, much bigger than that, but I just want to be sarcastic. So I would say sometimes people have these kind of themes, right? When we grow up in certain themes, when we grow up in certain families, these themes. Now, those themes may be true in that family system, but when you create a new family system and assuming that you're realizing that your husband is good for nothing, as a bum sitting on there doing nothing. So those are themes. Those themes have to be examined if it makes any sense. What data do you have? What data do you have to support those themes? So again, in the therapeutic processes, we question these themes. That's what happens. So again, I find it extremely useful. So according to the healthy couple, the healthy couple are those couple who have challenges, but they also have access to they access help. They look for help. They don't sit on the problem, as many of us people do. Many people sit on the problem. Oh my God, there's a social problem there. It's a stigma out there. I'm not going to do anything about it. So those are unhealthy couples according to this particular model. Healthy couples they have challenges, but they will find solutions to the problem. Unhealthy couples are those challenges, but they do not do anything about it. They pray about it. Nothing is wrong with prayer. I pray a lot too myself, but again, they don't actively look for. And there could be many reasons. There are barriers, like culture could be a barrier, social embarrassment could be a barrier. All those barriers are in place. Again, sometimes people are assuming there are barriers, or they don't have the courage to challenge those barriers in some case. So again, we have to bring all that into the therapy session. I think that will end for now today. There is more to say, but I'm going to end it here. So let's take questions. Yeah, thank you. And I hope that you get a sense of what affective reconstructive, basically what it is saying, that we need to reconstruct people's mindset in the therapeutic processes. And in order to reconstruct, you can sequence. One theory doesn't help you reconstruct it. In order to reconstruct the process, the person's experience, and life forward, we have to make interventions from different places. So it's a very methodical, conscientious, deliberate, collaborative, and consultative. You share it with your clients. I see this as a segment. Like, for example, I was challenging one of the clients. She kind of assumed that men are all good for nothing. So I asked her, how many men do you know are like that? She would say, oh yeah, XYZ. She gave a whole list. Do you think all men in this world are like that? Again, you're carefully, thoughtfully, caringly, not in a sarcastic way, because I'm a man myself. Again, you're challenging certain assumptions. In order to explore those assumptions, we need to we need to have different theoretical orientations. Maybe it's coming from a family of origin. That's what she knew. All men were jerks. All men were abusive. All men were, all those kind of things are. That can change. We can reconstruct affective reconstructivism. Does it make any sense? Okay, that's it. Sorry, I still keep talking.
Well, so before we continue with the discussion, can we just hold on for a minute?
Sure, of course. Yes.
Yeah. So it was a very interactive session for the last 5 days. And here we have our HOD of the department, Ms. Rosa, here with few words before we wind up with the session of the international workshop on couples therapy. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good evening, all. I would like to quote Abigail Adams. Learning is not attained by chance. It must be sought for with ardor and attended to with diligence. Dr. Seb, it was a privilege to have you with us for these 5 days. I'm sure each participant would agree that they were in flow every 2 hours they spent in this platform, listening, reflecting, and questioning to widen their perspective and knowledge on couple therapy. We owe you our deepest gratitude for accepting our invite and being the facilitator for last 5 days. I have not met a person who gets excited and thrilled with questions from the audience. Dear participants, you made these 5 days lively, interactive, and thought-provoking questions, opinions, and observations. Thank you. Hope to see you all if we plan for an advanced couple therapy soon. Once again, I thank each and everyone who participated, as well as our facilitator, Seb. Thank you.
You're welcome, of course. Yes, thank you, Rosa. Do we still have time to take questions, 1 or 2 questions, or no?
Yes, we have time to.
Okay, great. Excellent. Yeah, I have time. Yeah, good. Thank you so much, Rosa. I really appreciate it. This is a great opportunity. I love India, and I love Indian. I'm an Indian myself, of course, although I've been living here for a long time. It's exciting for me. You're the future of the country, and in different ways. Yes, thank you. So questions, people?
Sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you a question related to the previous one, on war veterans and trauma. I was just wondering, I don't know, maybe this is a very simplistic view of things, but is it possible that, since we spoke about conflicts, right, that, that are repressed, is it possible that, when you go into war, you need more of a, you need to function from a more destructive place versus when you go back into your family life, or when you talk about intimacy and, sex and things like that, it's more of a constructive, life-giving force. So do you think that that could also be part of the conflict, wherein there are 2 very different aspects that the person has to reconcile, and therefore the problems arise?
Yeah. Right. I agree with that. And I will also kind of say a little more about that. Yes. What I have seen is people go into these conflicts places and they function there. There is a clear, because although there is chaos around, the directions are clear, because no military person moves at his or her own whims and fancies. There are clear directions, clarity of communication, most often. And there are support systems there, because you're not left alone, because the whole troop will come around. So when you are in that military culture, order, the hierarchy, the command, obedience, all those things are important. There is no discussion possible. Can I attack in this? There is no discussion like that. It's already decided. Everything is, you follow thing. Everything's systematic and orderly, and enormously they also see the support of their brothers or sisters, in the sense that, camaraderie among the veterans is amazing. They kind of galvanize together, because that's how they deal with the threat, right? Danger. They strategically, when they come back home, Aisha, what happens is they come back to our crazy society. This is the data from the veterans. These kids are crying about stupid little thing. What the shit we had to deal with it outside. It's like, when I come back home, my kid is cranky about a cereal there's not enough milk in the cereal. Although I love my child, but again, this kind of petty little stupid things. And my wife is complaining to me about that crap. It doesn't matter for me. So again, the mindset has shifted so much. And on top of that, this kind of living in danger 18, 20 hours a day. I don't know how many of you have experienced any accident. I have been in an accident. That accident happened only for maybe less than 1 minute. That has an impact in my life. Each time I drive outside, it scares me. But when you talk about a veteran who has lived in danger constantly, 18, 20, 24 hours a day kind of danger, they have changed. The brain chemistry has changed. The whole system has changed. And when they come back home, they feel totally disconnected. Doesn't make sense to me. It is, in the meantime, guilt of losing guilt of survivor's guilt. I lost my friend. I lost, they are the brothers. So the loyalty, the kinship, the connection experienced in the military world, and the chaos and the disconnect and the selfishness and the craziness. In military, they talk about, I will give my life for my partner. That's a kind of self-sacrificing thing. Outside is kind of, people are nutty. I mean, many a times veterans, I don't know whether you know this number, we have 22 to 23 veterans commit suicide every single day in the United States, every single day. More death happens like that. You're talking about, this is crazy stuff. We don't, like, these are taking their own lives. And I work with some of these people, and I have lost a couple of them also. Again, they totally, it's a different world. So the point is, frustration, yes. Disconnect, yes. Total disillusionment, yes. Everything. It's a different world. And in the field of psychology, what I have understood is, we don't have theories to understand this. This is a different phenomenon. We need to develop specific theories for that particular population. That's what we are doing. We are in the process of theory generation. I'm doing a lot of ethnographic studies. I go to Vietnam many times, because I take war veterans who fought there 70 years ago. I travel with them to that place. I've gone there a couple of times with an intense research project. We stay there for a month. We go to different areas of operation. So again, basically, I'm saying, so we need to create new theories for that. That is a different world. Our theories don't fix it, understand it. And also, they also teach us that psychology is not the only thing in the world. You have to use psychology, yes. You have to use all that is from the psychology, psychiatry, medicine, cultural wisdom, spirituality. We need everything. It's a kind of, we can only think about addressing a human phenomenon from a socio-spiritual, contextual lens. And that's why there's more, what do you call, collaboration, multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinary studies to understand human phenomena. Because we used to believe that exclusively, psychologists do things, or social workers did it. No. We cannot think about exclusivism. We have to think of only inclusivistic sense. I hope it makes sense. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Was this been useful for you? Was it useful for you? This kind of, I talk too much about anyway. So how was it? Tell me, ask me questions, or give me some thoughts about your reality there, and it makes sense there.
Sir?
Mm-hmm.
So this is Lily.
Hi, Emily.
Yeah, sir. Just a question is regarding the sexual disorders presentation which you did few minutes back. So I just want to know, you talked about the anxiety anxiety
Yeah.
and the pain issues in females.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering whether the pain is real pain, right? They're actually
Right.
physiologically having that pain, right? I have
Absolutely.
heard like from few of my cousins and everyone. So that's
Mhm.
why I'm asking this question. So, so what do we do about it? Like, do we
Yeah.
approach a gynecologist or something like that, or
Absolutely. And again, as I said,
or like how do we do it? Deal it with psychologically, like.
yeah. So you're talking about your cousin. So I think you're not a therapist for her. At the same time,
Yeah.
you can help her where to get the help from, because sometimes that pain, I don't know that the depth of that pain, and I'm not a gynecologist to understand it. But again, I'm just kind of saying that when people talk about their pain, that is real for them, and there must be some, that we cannot ignore that reality. So because the pain may be preventing her or them from having that kind of sexual intimacy. So I would say, understand what it is. There must be a physiological reason. There must be a gynecological, again. So connect her to those kind of gynecologists or psychiatrists, or anxiety part. You talked about anxiety. So the pain may lead to anxiety. We talk about pathways, right? One could lead to the other, or kind of together aggregatively they kind of create kind of stress in the system. So help her understand what exactly the depth of what are the layers involved, what are the what is the real issue here, what are the factors contributing, psychosocial psycho factors or biological factors, or other factors. Just so once she understands it, then she can seek the help and get the help that she needs. But again, that it sounds like it requires some attention from a professional. So I would say connect them, guide them, support them. Maybe go with her if she's comfortable, because sometimes people may not even seek help because they don't have the courage or things to. So I would say you could be helpful to your cousin.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Often people don't go because of the embarrassment, right? Or because kind of it's embarrassing. What will I tell my husband? What will I tell my partner? What will I tell my mother? I'm living with my mother-in-law. What will I tell her? Oh no, she wants to know everything. She's so bloody nosy, and those also could be barriers in some ways. Those are so there are many issues, I guess. Thanks, Billy.
Sir, could you please tell us about the number of sessions total, or on an average, the number of sessions required, and about the maintenance phase?
Yeah, that's a great question. As a rule, of course, usually most of the sessions we get paid by the insurance, right? Insurance pays our services. So usually they allow up to 12 to 15. That's kind of usual range. But it doesn't mean that you should finish by 15. You can always extend it. Say that you address one problem and then you're going to take the next one. And then I've been in therapy at least for 4 years with one therapist now, because I go for therapist myself. So again, the length of the session may depend on the issue that you're addressing. So if the couple has about 5 issues and then maybe each of them can take long. So depending on how willing they are to pay, how will they pay, those kind of things. The numbers don't really matter much, but take one at a time, I would say.
Okay. And about the case that I mentioned before, if the wife wants to take some time, and should we continue individually with the husband, because he also now needs to accept the reality and all that, and wife wants to take a break of it, and come up, maybe let me decide and come back.
Yeah.
So we can break therapy, no?
Sure, of course you can break therapy based on what the presenting issues. Are you going to take the presenting issues as coming out process, or are you going to take the presenting issue as how they're going to live with it? There are different things, right? So it depends on you as a therapist to decide what you want to work on. If you want to work on what she's going to do after the fact, those could be a bunch of sessions. Again, examining her fears and concerns and solutions potentially. But ultimately, she has to make that decision.
Yes.
And also, they cannot live with this lie. This sounds it's like living in a lie kind of thing, right? People are
break of trust. It's a break of trust for her, because she didn't expect him to have be homosexual and attracted to another sex, which for her is now like a betrayal kind of. I was not told kind of.
Yeah. If you knew about it before. If you knew about it before, it's a betrayal. Sometimes people find out, oh my God, I did not know I'm more attracted to this, right? In the course of life.
Especially what I found with females is when there is asexuality, females don't know it. I have seen a female who was asexual, and did not know about it. Did not be in Indian context. I don't know many people who know about the fact that I'm asexual. So nothing attracted her, and mostly everything repulsed. So for her to continue in a marriage, she could just not tolerate the person touching. Anybody touching her also was very repulsive to her.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, again, but because of financial issues and all that, she wanted to continue the marriage, and yeah, that was one case. But there I couldn't help much because she could just not tolerate the person. So the other person's needs was not met at all. Whereas in this homosexual case, they already have a son.
Yeah. I mean, they can still make babies, right? They can still spermatozoa is not an issue here.
Yes.
It is like so. Yeah, I think don't you think it's all as a society we have to do something about these guys, right?
Yes,
we need to. It's so unfortunate.
Yes. At least we have taken a step towards at least not decriminalizing sex homosexuality. That is one positive step, but marriage is still now is not a possibility in India.
Yeah, right.
It has become possible in US.
Yeah, maybe I think I think you cannot give up there. So I would say India has been amazingly technological revolution is happening since 90s.
Yes.
We need to have also socio-cultural revolution. I think people's freedom and all that needs to happen a lot. And I think you people can make a lot of difference by engaging the community in conversations.
Yes, about patriarchy. Yesterday I was thinking about that patriarchy thing, wherein if I can give an example of my own home, I have two sons, and when my mother-in-law is around, she has this tendency to give them water. So what happens is when I come home, my son suddenly starts, "Mummy, pani lao, get me water." And I'm surprised, like, when did this come from? Where did this habit of asking water from me come from? And then I realized that the mothers, we also tend to do that, tend to make them helpless. And then when they grow up, our daughter-in-laws are going to kill us.
Yeah. That's right. Grandma wants to spoil them by giving them water, although they can take it themselves, right?
Yes,
so mommy has a new job now.
Yeah. So as mothers, we all need to change. We have to take that step, is what I feel. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. And the session has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Amazing. That's good. That's good. Amazing question. I think I think we can make small changes in our own homes, right? We can start with our own home, with our own kids.
Yeah, with our own kids.
They may get out there, and then the other kids wonder, why are you so different? Because my parents are wonderful. That's why. So I think that's a small change. The change happens in small circles, right? Change always happens small.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Rosa, maybe.
This is Akhila. I hope I can ask you one question.
Sure. Yeah, I'm here.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to check, once people come for therapy and that has helped them for some time, does it last? Will they come back? I mean, I'm sure they will have, problems later. So do the people benefit from it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, it happens all the time.
Can they sustain it is what I'm asking.
Yeah. Say, I think, they're in phases, right? So, for example, a client comes to me, I'm with the client, we work on the problem, 15, 16, whatever number of sessions. And then they think that it's resolved. That particular issue is resolved at this time. And they take a break. And then I would always invite them, if at all you need to a booster one, or you want to come back and check in a kind of maintenance kind of things, maybe a next year or a couple of months later. Yeah, that's always keep that door open. If they really connect with you, if they trust you, and they want to stay with you. Otherwise, they don't want to go back again to another person and start it all over again, the history and a bunch of things. But sometimes people stay. I stay with mine for a long time. That happens all the time. So I think. So it's always good to have somebody, a consultant. I think keep that person, at least go for an annual checkup or something like that, I would say, to people. Just check in with your partner, just check in with the therapist on how you're doing and all those things. I do that myself for my own clinical practice.
Basically, if people go back into their bad habits and there's something like a relapse, but not in the addiction. But people tend to go back to their old ways. So it's a long process. Right?
It's a long process. Again, it's a lifelong process. It's not like taking a medication and you're done with it, right? It's a process where your psyche is constantly evolving. Your mind, your system is completely evolving all the time. So whether it is addictions definitely there should be. But again, otherwise, checking is always good. It's always a good thing to be in shape. And as a therapist, I do that all the time because I have, I would recommend, and I'm sure all of you do the same, I guess. We have to be in therapy ourselves, right? All of us have to be in therapy. I'll tell you one, this is kind of very personal. Again, there are many things. Sometimes certain blind spots come in, right? So certain clients trigger us in certain times. So I may want to know why it is happening. So again, we may have certain attraction towards some people in the therapy process. Not just sexual alone, but again, some sort of emotional connection with them or some more allegiance to them, or you think about them outside on those, because in the therapy, that's kind of very intimate, finer things happen, right? And so we definitely need to be on top of things, because if you're a surgeon, you have surgical instruments and all those things to work on at the surgical table. But for us, this is it. Person of the therapist, self of the therapist, instrumentality is me. So we have to constantly fine tune. So we have to be in therapy ourselves. Also, I would say that's an important thing. Otherwise, you get lost. Disillusion, or what do you call, compassion fatigue, different things that we talk about, exhaustion, burnout. We may be extremely useful to our clients, but we may become extremely useless to our family because we are exhausted. We have given away everything. So we have to take care of ourselves by being in therapy, doing the right things. I have a couple of friends, they practice only 2 days a week. They deal with intense cases, just 2 days. 3 days they play. They play means they go for the, kind of games and they yoga classes, music thing and all. They have other things going on because that's part of because you're talking about emotional toxicity, right? You're listening to this crap, the most destructive, crazy, hopeless stuff, and the proximity to it is kind of messes you up, especially emotionally. You lose hope and you become suicidal, you become depressed in your personal life unless you take care of yourself. So that's an important thing. I think I cannot emphasize that enough. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
We have enough time to take one more question, sir, or last one.
Sure. Of course. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm sure all our participants have many more questions to go because we are the information and everything that we've gathered is really quite very good. So, but unfortunately, we have just about 5 more minutes if you can go ahead.
Sure,
and
of course.
I suppose more questions.
Yeah.
Do we have any question to Dr. Sim? One last question for the day.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm also reading this the chat. Thank you so much for the comments. I didn't pay attention to the comment at all on the side. Yeah. So if there's any question that I can take, otherwise I can, thank you. Okay. You're welcome. Of course. Yeah. One of my questions for you. Let me ask you a question. If you don't have any question. Your profession, you're getting trained in your profession, or you're already a professional out there. What are you going to do with that other than outside the therapy room? In what way will you be useful to the mainstream community? In what way will you educate the mainstream community? In what way can you contribute to the understanding? Like, for example, do you write in a journal, or do you write in a newspaper article, a news column, or do you go for an interview? Somebody interviews you. Do you because you have something precious, which our community and society can benefit a lot. So I would say, what are you doing with that kind of knowledge that you have as a trained professional? Kind of curious about that.
Seb,
Yeah,
I remember like the last class that you had with us, you asked the same question. Like
yes.
we are trained psychologists, trained counselors with so much more information. Do something. So with a few colleagues of mine, we have come up with a page, like a blog page,
Yeah.
where we
Wow.
try to bridge the gap between common man and counseling. Like we try to write down articles in a very simple manner so that people
Wow.
understand what exactly counseling is, what psychology is. I actually
Wow.
mailed you regarding that, like,
Yeah,
few
yeah.
days ago,
Isha,
and I
yes.
wanted you to look at it and go through and give us your feedback. It's
Sure.
just like an infant at present. We are trying to build more contacts, get in more people. So yeah, that's one thing that we are doing.
Wow. So you're kind of breaking down all these jargons in the psychology world
Yeah,
and make it more accessible to people so that they can read and learn. Or give
yeah.
a talk. Go to a school and talk to the kids about, the kind of about bullying, depression, whatever it is again, there's so much. Thanks, Isha. I'm so glad that you're doing it and your team is doing it. That's amazing.
And one more thing that we're trying to do is getting the psychological concepts in vernacular language because most of the literature is only in English. In
Uh,
India, there are a lot of people who don't know English, so we are trying to get in Hindi or other languages.
wow. Great. Wow. That's amazing. That's good news. I hope that you'll continue to do that. If you need any kind of research grants or kind of to do this kind of, just stay in touch with me. I think I told your class about it
Yeah,
already.
yeah, yeah.
You can do so much. You guys can do so much. There's a great field out there. We need to have a psychosocial revolution in India, right?
Yeah,
Psychosocial
definitely.
revolution. We are technologically, we are great, but we have to go a long way still. Sarah, I cannot hear it. You're muted, Sarah.
Okay, hello everyone. Hi, Seb. Yeah, in response to your question, I'm actually an assistant professor at St. Agnes. I teach M.Sc.
Wow.
But I'm currently on maternity leave, which is extended for almost 2 years now. So during this time that I thought, I wanted to do something more. I otherwise give remedial training. So I thought of starting an Instagram page because currently that is what I can manage with looking after my kids and giving to the community. So it's just a month now, and it's called Mindspace, and I just put up feel good quotes and more psychoeducative information, so that anybody who wants to access information regarding mental health can get it through there. So it's still at infancy stage. uh,
Yeah.
so just
Amazing.
something. Yeah.
Amazing. That's great. So you're really doing great work. Yeah,
Thank you.
that's absolutely. And I'm sure you must be getting a lot of feedback also. Great feedback. People are responding to that, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but a
Yeah.
lot of youth,
Great.
responding to it. Yeah.
Nice.
It just struck me that because there was a lot of suicide happening during this pandemic time, and I was thinking, okay, what can I do? Not very easy because managing the child at home, and so just taking baby steps.
Yeah.
Yes,
And your whole
I'm,
life ahead of you, right? Life is ahead of you. So many
yes,
years. That's
yeah.
good. So excellent. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing that. Yeah, that's cool.
And we enjoyed your session, Seb. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Of course. Thank you so much. Any last one? Or okay.
नहीं. Hello.
Yes, Mathura. Yes.
Yeah, actually, right from my early years, like I'm in my late 40s, just to share that very early in my um, 20s, I was very active in bringing in the social change. I don't know whether, like, I was involved in a lot of groups, and when you were talking about sexuality and sexual problems in couples, actually we had started a group that time for young boys and girls who are thinking about marriage, like they are already into a relationship and thinking or wanting to, it was called Sath, and I'm from Pune, basically now settled in Goa. So it was called Sath, and we had a lot of sessions for young boys and girls, young adults who are considering settling in quote unquote. According to me, it's the most unsettling experience getting married. So
Right.
so settling in that cultural context, and then what are the various things one needs to think about. And we had called then the well-known sexologist
Wow.
in Pune to give a talk about what could be the challenges and how one should see sexual intimacy as one aspect of marriage and not the only thing to be
Right.
done immediately and get success into.
Yeah.
Various things. Then I worked into inclusion of children with disabilities in mainstream, because that is still not very commonly seen phenomenon in India. So disability and inclusion, and also emotional challenges what children face during teenagers. So that was
Wow.
my space. And
Great.
now
Wow.
slowly settling into individual counseling. There's kind of a fatigue which I
Yeah.
experienced working as an advocate to different departments, government departments, and seeing how slowly things
You're only
move
supposed
at
to be
that
done
end.
at 9:30.
Sorry about that.
Seeing the lot of bureaucracy and mainly the political influence in every single system we would want to change. So it kind of gotten into a fatigue now. So I'm just now taking a pause.
Great, great. That's good news. Thank you so much for doing so much around the, bringing some changes in your community. That's awesome, and also the future
Now
generation.
not
Yeah,
so much. I've paused
yeah,
now.
yeah.
I
Okay.
feel like I'm tired.
Hey, all right. You can take a break and get back. Thank you so much again for
Thank you.
sharing that, and thanks to all of you. And I really appreciate your everything. Very cool. Let's connect again at some point, and with all the best to you. You have a great. There's a fertile ground out there in India. It's ready to ripe. Again, you got to do a lot of good works. Again, stay in touch and connect with Roshni, Nilaya, and others. And good luck to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. You're welcome.
Thanks
Have
a
a good
lot.
one.
Thank you.
You're welcome, of course.
Sessions,
Sure.
Seb.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. Bye. I think your dog's tired.
Like, she's like she thinks she's a center of the world. Hey,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, she can say hello. Hello. That's very
Hi.
Silly.
Hi.
Okay. They're saying hi to you. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And
Yeah.
good night. It must be time to sleep
Good
there,
night.
right? Take care.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, I want
Thank
to.
you, everyone.
No. She has Abby, this is not. Sorry about that. She's so silly.
Okay. I have shared the feedback link. I request all the participants to kindly fill that up for us and to give your feedback. Thank you so much. It was amazing to have you all for the last 5 days. Hopefully, we will be meeting next sometime soon. I mean, we'll be meeting sometime soon. So have a pleasant day and thank you for being there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಬೇಕು ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಬೇಕಲ್ಲ